Oh, sweet child, don't cry. I'll lick your scars softly, nibble at them slowly, and finally eat them. Your pain is so beautiful. Hush now, hush. Let me take it all away. Even now, from time to time, so many years later, in the dead of night, I hear those words delivered to me in my most vulnerable moment. I hear that monstrous, syrupy, sweet, vile voice. It slithers through my memories like a wet tongue on raw skin. No child ever expects to come face to face with pure, unadulterated evil. What was lost then can never be regained, but perhaps I can find solace and peace of mind from writing this down. Two events happened throughout the spring of 1994 when I was 14. Kurt Cobain ended his life, and something extraordinarily evil and predatory made the small town I grew up in its hunting grounds. This story is a tribute to a time and place I both wish to forget and remember, to the wonders and frailty of youth and the shaky dreams that never came to be, and most of all, to my cherished group of childhood friends. It started on the evening of April 9th, 1994. We were all gathered in Gordy's parents' garage. The mood was solemn and quiet. Gordy was fiddling with his pick, just strumming on his unplugged electric guitar. You could faintly hear the intro to Come As You Are resting in the still night air. Gordy was the kind of kid who liked to stay quiet and let his guitar speak for him. Then he'd open his mouth, and you could tell he considered his words carefully. Whenever everything got out of hand, he would always be the one to ground things, cut through the noise, and approach it all with a clear head. He was, unquestionably, the one we all looked up to. Stump sat at the drum set, just looking straight out into nothingness with a blank stare in his eyes, which wasn't like him. He was always abrasive and outspoken. He'd run his mouth like he ran the drums, fast and loud, with a wit none of us could match. His real name was Louis, but we called him Stump since he was a year younger and a half a head shorter than the rest of us. Fiery auburn red hair and freckles, piercing blue eyes which fit his energetic and fast on his toes persona. He'd been moved up from 7th grade to our 8th grade class. He wasn't being challenged enough intellectually, according to his strict parents. He read a lot of books, which we all thought were pretty nerdy, but it also came in handy at times. After watching the Chainsaw Massacre a couple of months prior, he had become obsessed with serial killers and would often quote us random facts. Besides Stump, we'd sometimes call him Shortstein because he was supposedly too clever for his own class, but also short. I know we weren't very inventive with the names, but really he took the lighthearted bullying like a champ, and that's why we liked him and quickly invited him into the fold. I sat on the banged-up couch we'd found under an overpass. The scratched-up wooden table in front of me was littered with cigarette marks, beers, and soda cans we'd stolen from Stump's dad. Dylan threw himself down next to me on the couch and lay his head in my lap, staring at the ceiling. Jesus Christ, this is fucking depressing. You'd think someone died. He was the jokester, and also chronically incapable of reading a room, which meant he didn't have many friends besides us. But he played a mean bass, and really he wasn't that bad once you got to know him. He had a loyalty and a heart of gold behind his carefully crafted facade. He was the one I had known the longest. We grew up on the same block and used to play in the green bushes and woods behind our houses. In that moment, on that April night in 1994, I welcomed him, breaking the awkward silence. It made Gordy get up, plug his guitar in, and before long we blasted In Bloom so loud it tore through the night and probably woke up the neighbors several blocks away. Gordy's voice soared through the garage and beyond, like an angry period and conclusions to everything Kurt had been to us. I played rhythm guitar, and although there were times I felt like I was just there like a fly on the wall, strumming along, just being a part of it was enough for me. I know it might seem odd that the death of a person we never met would hit us this hard, but Nirvana, and Kurt Cobain in particular, had been our beacon of light. To us, he was proof that misfits and oddballs could make it. We felt he spoke to us when he sang about apathy, boredom, and disillusionment with that raspy, unmistakable voice. The fact that he would opt out of life just like that was a major blow, like losing a kindred spirit. In truth, I guess we felt invisible, except for the odd bullying here and there. It was as if no one even noticed that we existed. When we played together, though, we all became one unit. Loud, young, dumb, determined, hoping for that breakthrough that would take us all away from this butthole of a small town we were stuck in. Misery and boredom had brought us together. The never-dying and optimistic spirit of youth kept us going. It kept us determined not to stay invisible. Looking back now, I wish more than anything we had just stayed that way, invisible and together. I wish we hadn't noticed, singled out by that thing. The final echoes of Smells Like Teen Spirit faded, swallowed by the silence that rushed in like a cold tide. We all put down our instruments and sat around the garage table. Gordy shifted in his seat, then stood, disappearing for a moment before returning with something dusty and old in his hands, a wooden board, edges chipped and yellowed with age. He set it down on the table, and we leaned in, the candlelight making the letters shimmer like whispers carved in bone. "It's a Ouija board," he said, voice low, almost reverent. "I thought we might try to, maybe get in contact with them. Kurt, I'd never pegged Gordy as the superstitious type. His expression was unreadable, serious, almost expectant. However unconventional it may have seemed then, I now realized he was trying to present a way for us to process what we were feeling. None of us could have known then the horrible road it led us down. It was just a stupid game. Or so we thought. "I know what that is, Gordy. I think we all do. Are you actually serious?" I said.
"Come on,"
Stump chimed in, arms crossed.
"Don't tell me you actually believe that crap. What are you, 10?
Gordy shrugged. "What harm could it do? Worst case, it doesn't work. Best case, we get to talk to the legend himself." Dylan snorted. "Dumbass, even if it did work, which it won't, why the hell would Kurt Cobain's ghost be hanging around your garage? Why would he talk to a bunch of nobodies?" Stump shot him an angry glare.
"Hey, why wouldn't he? We're pretty cool."
Dylan laughed. "Stump, shut up. No, we're not. And you don't even believe in this."
"Whatever, I'm just saying, we're awesome. Fuck you."
I swallowed, an uneasy weight settling in my stomach. The air felt charged electric, like the moment before a storm. I wasn't sure why, but something about this felt wrong, off. "I don't know," I muttered. "Is this really a good idea? What if..." I wasn't particularly superstitious, at least not at that point, yet the idea did unsettle me. Maybe I just felt some things were best left alone. Dylan pulled his shirt over his head, waving his arms like a cartoon ghost. "Boo, Jakey, I'm the vengeful spirit of all the kids you shot into your cumsock." I shoved him, suppressing a laugh. "Oh, piss off." "Come on," Gordy cut in, voice firm. "I'm bored. Let's just do this. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Never mind. And Jakey, as long as we stick to the rules, we should be fine." Boredom and curiosity won out over the unease gnawing at me. "Never mind." "Yeah," I exhaled. "Let's do it. Never mind."
"Never mind,"
Stump and Dylan echoed. Gordy doused the lights and struck a match. The candle flames flickered, casting long, shifting shadows against the walls. Dylan smirked. "Oh, looks cozy. Now we just need a red and white checkered tablecloth and a bowl of spaghetti, and then Stump and Jake are ready for date night." Stump shot back with his usual quick wit.
That's the kind of thing someone in the closet would say, right? It's okay, Dylan, we all hate you just the way you are. It's safe for you to come out."
For a second, Dylan's smirk faltered. It was just a flicker, then he was back to his usual goofy self. Gordy cut in before he could throw another jab, his voice sharp. "Can you guys just shut the fuck up for once? Try to be serious." We heard the tone of his voice and realized the time for joking was over. He had a way of commanding our respect, our attention. We all scooted together as he laid out the rules and explained the process. Gordy laid the board down slowly, almost ceremonially, then straightened up and fixed us each with a serious look. The candlelight threw restless shadows across his face, making his eyes seem darker than usual. "All right," he said, voice low and steady. "Before we start, the rules." I raised a hand, ticking them off with fingers that trembled just slightly. "Rule number 1, never play alone. We've got one covered." He didn't smile when he said it. No one did. "Rule 2, be respectful. Don't mock the game. Dylan, this especially applies to you." Dylan rolled his eyes and opened his mouth, but for once thought better of it. His face tightened, and he nodded. Gordy glanced around, making sure we were still with him. His eyes lingered on each of us. Then he went on. "Rule 3, Never take your fingers off the planchette until the session is over. That's the tether. You break that connection, you risk letting something in. Planchette, tether. Dylan made a fancy gesture as he said it. You sure know some mighty big words, Gords. Gordy just barked at him. That's what it's called, dickhead. I was concerned about what exactly could happen if this rule was broken. How bad is that, exactly? I asked, trying to sound casual, but my voice wavered and cracked at the end like a snapping twig. Gordy didn't flinch. Bad, he said. Like something comes through and stays. My stomach twisted, cold and hollow. I didn't even know if I believed in this stuff. But somehow, breaking the rules felt worse than just inviting bad luck. It felt like a dare we couldn't take back. Dylan leaned in and slung an arm over my shoulder. Don't worry, Jakester. I'll protect you from the ghosties. His voice had that usual sarcastic tone, but there was something else there under the joke. A flicker of sincerity I knew better than to brush off. For all his posturing, Dylan never bailed when it counted. He had proved his loyalty to us more than once before. Rule 4, Gordy said. Keep a candle burning. It's not just for looks, but the flame wards off dark energy. But if it flickers hard or dies out completely, we stop. Immediately. I actually looked this stuff up. Stump scoffed, arms crossed.
Wow, Gordy, you really have been doing your spooky homework. Is this your end-of-year essay topic now? How to summon dead rock stars in your garage? And aren't you breaking a rule by doing this in your own home?
Gordy glared at him, jaw tightening, but he didn't rise to it right away. Then he muttered, deadpan. The garage isn't connected to the house, so technically, it doesn't count because this isn't mine or anyone else's home. And no, Stump, I'm writing my end-of-year assignment on your mom's tits. Dylan wheezed and nearly choked on his own spit, howling with laughter. I bit back a snort. Gordy didn't usually jab like that. Maybe the tension was getting to him as well. Stump smirked and shrugged it off like he always did. Nothing ever seemed to stick to him. Rule 5, Gordy said, getting back on track. If the planchette starts moving too fast, stop. That's not normal. It can mean the spirit is angry, confused, or something else. We all went silent at that. Gordy continued. Rule number 6. Always say goodbye at the end of a session. No questions about that one. It made sense. Gordy's voice dropped, barely above a whisper now. And rule number 7. If the planchette moves in a figure 8, we have to end the session immediately. No questions, just stop. Why? Dylan asked, more curious than sarcastic. Because the figure 8 is a symbol of infinity, eternity. If a spirit does that, it's not talking, it's latching. It wants to cross over. Stump blinked and then raised a brow.
7 rules? That's it? Weird number. I always thought spooky shit came in 3s or 5s.
Gordy gave him a flat stare. Well, Shortstein, maybe there are other versions. These are ours. We sat in silence for a moment, the rules hanging in the air like heavy smoke. Outside, the wind scraped against the side of the garage. Inside, the candlelight flickered like it was trying to warn us. We placed our fingers lightly on the planchette, the silence in the garage stretching tight as a wire. You could have heard a pin drop, or a breath held too long. The air felt heavier, dense with something unseen, something waiting. Even Dylan wasn't joking anymore. Gordy cleared his throat, his voice low, careful, like he didn't want to wake something. We wish to speak to the spirit of Kurt Cobain. A heartbeat passed. Then Dylan, ever the idiot, broke the tension with a lopsided grin. And if he's busy, maybe Elvis can go get him? Gordy shot him a glare that could have cracked glass. Dylan, don't. Dylan shrugged and fell quiet. The fragile stillness felt thinner now, as if something had noticed us. The candle burned steadily, its small flame casting long, reaching shadows that slithered across the garage walls. Nothing moved. Gordy tried again. We wish to speak to the spirit of Kurt Cobain. Can you hear us? The planchette twisted, just a small, shivering motion, but enough to freeze the breath in my lungs. I leaned toward Dylan and whispered sharply, Knock it off. His brows furrowed. I'm not doing anything. I looked at Stump. His face was unreadable, but his hands were slightly shaking. Then once more, Gordy's voice. Kurt, are you with us? The planchette slid slowly across the board. Y-E-S. I jerked back slightly. Okay, now one of you is messing around, come on. But I scanned the others' faces and saw only confusion and suspicion, as if they were all quietly contemplating who might be moving the planchette. Some tried to lighten the tension.
You know, Y for yes and for no, that works fine. No need to burn through the alphabet.
Stump, shut up. Gordy snapped, his voice harder than usual. He leaned closer to the board, eyes fixed. Kurt, is that really you? Y-E-S. Dylan shifted beside me, muttering under his breath. Jake, are you messing with this? Seriously. I dug my elbow into his ribs. No, dude, I swear. Whatever. He didn't seem convinced. The candle flame fluttered, though there was no wind. The shadows on the wall stretched long and crooked. Gordy continued, slower now, as if somewhat afraid of what might answer. Kurt, we have questions. The room seemed to pull in tighter. The silence was burning a hole in my chest. Stump took charge now, leaned forward, his voice quieter than before. Kurt, what did it feel like knowing that the whole world knew your name, that you'd made it? We all wanted to know this. We dreamed of that feeling. The planchette hesitated, then moved again. Y-E-S. I sighed, nonsensical answer. In that moment I felt stupid for even believing the whole thing for as much as a second. Guys, seriously, this is so lame. You could have at least put some effort into it. They didn't respond. Their eyes were locked onto the board. Then, without warning, the planchette jerked. My fingers barely stayed on as it sped across the surface in a faster pace now. W-O-U-L-D, you like to know how it feels. We all looked at each other, too stunned to speak. I don't get it. What does that mean? Dylan said, clearly directed at us, but the planchette began moving again. I-C-A-N, show you how it feels. I can make your dreams come true. The air turned icy, cold, like winter air leaking in from somewhere it shouldn't. The flame flickered violently, casting the walls in wild, shifting shapes. I swallowed hard. This felt wrong. Gordy, I want to stop, please. Dylan nodded. Yeah, man, that's enough. This is messed up. Can't you see Jake's upset? Dylan tried to seem brave for me, but I felt his frame shivering against me. But Gordy didn't even look at us. This isn't a game to me. I need answers. I know you all want to know the answer to this. And then he asked the question. Why did you kill yourself? The words hit the air like stones breaking glass.
Dude, no, you can't ask that question.
Stump snapped.
You said to be respectful. That was your own rule.
Everything in me screamed to pull my hand away, but I didn't dare. None of us did, not anymore. Dylan leaned into me, his body trembling against mine. This is bad. Seriously, Jake, this is bad. I nodded. I knew. I felt it in my teeth and my gut like a storm about to break. Gordy leaned closer. Please, just tell us why. The planchette moved, slow and deliberate. I am eternal. I am. It stopped, hung there, like it was savoring the moment. Gordy's face was drained of color. His voice dropped to a whisper. It seemed finally he snapped out of whatever space he had been in, and the realization hit him like a ton of bricks. That's not Kurt.
No shit,
Dylan muttered, voice tight with panic. Then the planchette started moving again. We traced each letter with a rising sense of dread and unease as the message was revealed. The Scar Eater. What the hell is that? What does that mean? Stop this shit, Gordy, Dylan, whoever is doing this. My voice rang through the garage, the words clawing their way out of my throat in terror. Stump was pale as a ghost now, his hands trembling on the planchette. I want out, Dylan said. I want out right now. But none of us could move. Our fingers stayed pinned to the planchette as if nailed in place. Then it happened. The planchette snapped to life, jerking beneath our fingers with a violence that defied explanation. It dragged our hands across the board in a looping, relentless motion, sideways, figure eights carved again and again with mechanical precision, the infinity symbol. None of us was moving, and not willingly, I was sure. Our fingertips clung to it out of reflex or fear. I don't even know which. Something primal locked us in place. Dylan screamed first, a ragged, panicked cry. I followed, and even Stump, the eternal skeptic, let out a shrill, guttural sound that didn't seem like it belonged to a boy his age at all. Stop it! I shrieked. Gordy, what the hell do we do? Gordy looked like a corpse. His skin had gone paper white and his lips quivered like they'd forgotten how to form words. His voice finally came hoarse and cracking. Say goodbye, all of us now. We did, all at once. The words tumbled from our mouths like a desperate prayer, rising in intensity. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. But deep down, I sensed it. It was already too late. The candle beside us sputtered once, then it died. A hiss, like a final breath. Shadows followed the garage hole. Then from the far end of the room, past the stacks of old tires, the rusting bikes, and the shelves thick with the dust and tools, came sound. Wet, heavy, a sickening slap, like raw meat hitting concrete. We froze. Something shifted, hidden just beyond the shadows. A hideous shape. Two bright, bloodshot eyes watching us from the dark, calmly waiting. None of us spoke. None of us breathed. The silence stretched out, humming, pulsing, alive. The sweet and rotten smell began to fill the room, like candy and decay. Then, cutting through the dark, came a voice, soft, sweet, vile, a sickening, unnatural pitch, almost childlike in its amusement. I'll make you beg for it. I'll make you plead, like a starved puppy. Then I'll take you to that special place you all dream of, at a price. All your pretty scars. The shape emerged from the shadows. We got a glimpse, but I'm still not sure my brain could properly process what I was saying. It was so quick you could blink and miss it, like a millisecond snapshot of teeth tearing through flesh, maggots, torture, and something else, like 1,000 screaming faces blended into one terrifying mass. Then silence reclaimed the garage, thick and suffocating, like a blanket soaked in dread. The air felt wrong, emptied of presence, yet charged, as if something unseen still lingered just beyond the edges of the garage, watching. Dylan clung to me like a drowning man to the driftwood. His whole body trembled against mine, silent tears streaking down his face. I'd never seen him like this before. Stump sat frozen, lips twitching, eyes vacant. He whispered into the stale darkness like a mantra or a malfunction.
This didn't happen. This isn't real. There's no such thing. Ghosts aren't real. Demons aren't real. This didn't happen.
Gordy looked around at us, pale and white as a freshly washed sheet. What did we just do? What the fuck just happened? Stump broke out of his frightened trance.
We? You mean you? You suggested this shit to begin with, and then you took it too far.
Gordy's frame shivered, clearly upset. Stump, I'm sorry, I broke in between them. Shut up. Just shut up. We are going to forget this happened, okay? We are going to forget and pretend it never happened. Dylan was sobbing slowly beside me, stripped of his jokes, his bravado, reduced to something raw and terrified. I put my arm around him.
Forget it? One thing is the stupid planchette moving. That could have been one of you assholes. But we all heard that voice, didn't we? I think I saw something too, for just a glimpse.
Stump looked around at all of us, clearly broken. This defied his deep-rooted sense of logic. His lips quivered as he said it.
And what the fuck is a scar eater? Forget that. I don't even want to know.
We just nodded. We had all heard the voice. We had all heard its ominous threat. Gordy cleared up. Then he did what he always did whenever we landed ourselves in trouble. He tried to rationalize himself out of it. Look, maybe we all had a bit too much of that weed we shared earlier. Maybe we shouldn't have mixed that with beer. I don't think any of us bought that explanation, but we wanted to. We desperately wanted to, so we all ended up agreeing on that explanation. We were high, drunk, got ourselves all riled up, and saw and heard shit that just didn't happen. If only that had been the truth. But the horror to come was much darker than shadows, crueler than silence, and so vile it felt stitched from the marrow of our deepest fears, as if it came from some realm beyond ours, where evil had infinite time and resources to devise torment like carefully crafted artwork. artwork fit to hang in the great halls of hell. It defied the boundaries of nightmares, especially for those of us who already knew how pain could wear many masks, from the quiet ache of neglect to the raw wound of loss and abuse. The following week, nothing much happened, although I swear it felt as if something had changed. I could feel it subtly, footsteps scraping behind me, faint and strange laughs carried by the wind, shadows looming, forming shapes they shouldn't be forming. I kept it all to myself, told myself I was imagining it, but it felt like something was charging, slowly building up. It was Tuesday, and I was on my way to see the school counselor, Mr. Wentworth. The school had called my foster parents about my, quote, behavior, end quote, as if skipping school here and there and not paying attention in class was out of the ordinary for a 14-year-old kid. My grades were garbage, though, I'll admit that much, except for music and English class. In fact, if I'm being totally honest, looking back now, maybe I understood why my foster parents worried about me. Mr. Wentworth's office was different, to say the least. Old movie posters, band posters, trinkets and souvenirs from what I guess was a lot of traveling. One poster caught my eye. Nirvana. I nodded in silent approval before sitting down. Mr. Wentworth looked through some papers before he looked up at me. My first impression was that he looked like an unwashed hippie. Not nice, I know, but that's the feeling I got. Rough, unkempt beard, check. Hippie glasses, check. Flowery and colorful shirt, check again. I sighed. I just had to string him along. This wasn't the first time I had to deal with this sort of thing. My fosters had sent me to several child psychiatrists right after taking me in. I had learned how to give them what they wanted so they would leave me alone. So Jake, first things first, I'm here to help the best way I can. I'm not a psychiatrist, so don't worry, I'm not going to psychoanalyze you or anything like that. We're just going to talk a bit about how you're doing in school, and basically whatever you want to talk about that might be bothering you. Does that sound fun? I nodded. I was already bored. He nodded too. Good. Whew. I was afraid you might be one of those needy brats actually expecting me to solve all their problems for them. I raised my eyebrows a bit. This one was definitely new. He shot me a crooked smile when he saw my surprised reaction. Hey, counselors are human beings too. I get tired as well. You know what especially gets my gears grinding? Kids who expect me to magically solve problems they themselves are causing. I know it's my job, but honestly, well, sorry I got sidetracked. Tell me a bit about yourself. I was astounded, honestly, but his straightforward, no bullshit attitude was refreshing. I decided to play along. I don't know what to say. I'm just not very interested in school. He nodded. No harm in that. There must be something you're interested in, though. My eyes trailed toward his Nirvana poster. I guess I really want to be a musician, if I'm being honest. My foster parents think it's stupid. His eyes locked on mine and I felt the sincerity in them, maybe even a form of kinship, but a slight sadness too. There's nothing stupid about having dreams, Jake, as long as you're realistic about them. Do you expect to be a rock star? Hell yes, I want to be a rock star, who doesn't? His laugh was heartfelt, no condescending tone at all. I understand, I do. What an exciting life it must seem like to a kid from this, let's be honest, boring little town in the middle of nowhere. He kept on surprising me. But I guess I wonder if you might be able to temper your expectations somewhat. If you don't become the next Cobain, maybe you would be fine with something less. A reasonable question, really, and A+ for name-dropping my biggest idol. But to a fragile 14-year-old with a head full of dreams, it seemed more like the same kind of disapproval and lack of belief in me I'd heard before. I think he sensed my disapproval and quickly asked another question. What got you into music in the first place? My heart skipped a beat. I didn't like that question, never did. I always lied or shrugged it off. But something about his sincere interest made me just be honest. What could it hurt anyway? Maybe I could have some fun with this. My mom used to sing me songs before she died. Velvet Underground, The Byrds, stuff like that. She had all these records she would put on too, then she'd pick me up and dance with me in her arms. I really liked that. He must have felt like he was getting somewhere, like he was connecting with me, like he was picturing these happy moments. I had him hooked. It sounds like your mom was a wonderful person. I flinched at the assumption. This is why I don't like telling people how I got into music. No, I fucking hate her. She was a junkie who only cared about me when she was high. She did have a pretty voice, though, and some nice records. Clearly, he was taken aback. I almost relished in it. Now comes the excuses, the attempt to salvage it all. She had loved me after all, and addiction does terrible things to people, yada yada yada. I'm sorry to hear that, Jake. I really am. I certainly understand if you hate her. What was this guy's deal? I thought. You don't understand anything. His voice changed. A calm, soothing quality came over it. Addiction is a hard thing to grasp. It really does change people. But I'm not concerned with how she dealt with her addiction. I'm concerned how you feel about it. I was getting slightly annoyed at this point. I felt like testing him. I hate her. That's how I feel. In fact, I hate her so much I don't even care if I fucked up my life because there is nothing I could ever do or be that will be as shitty as she was to me. I just don't care. He looked at me calmly with what seemed like genuine concern behind his gaze. Well, that is certainly one way to go about things. I can't deny that. I scoffed at him. And what is another? He looked me dead in the eye, and I will never forget what he said next. You could prove that bitch wrong. She made you feel worthless, didn't she? Like you weren't worth it, worth her recovery, worth her effort to stay clean. Prove her wrong. Be better. Chase your dreams, whatever it takes. Let it fuel you, that resentment. You are right to be hurt, Jake. I was dumbfounded. This counselor surely weren't like any other I had met before. I guess that's true. We talked a bit longer until he wrapped it up. Well, Jake, I think we're off to a good start. I'm not going to take away any more of your time now. We got some more mandatory talks. But I want you to know you run the show here. We can talk about whatever troubles you. I'm not here to tell you what to do or judge you. I hope you'll come to realize that. I nodded, still in shock over this guy's alternative approach. And Jake, I stopped and turned around. Don't tell anyone I called your mom a bitch, okay? I'm told counselors aren't supposed to use that kind of language. I nodded with a smirk and left his office. I hadn't even made it halfway across the schoolyard when Gordy grabbed my arm with an iron grip. Jake, we need to talk, now. His voice was tight, clipped, none of that usual Gordy calm. He dragged me past the rusted chain-link fence at the edge of campus, into the forgotten scrubland behind the school, where the old train tracks lay buried under weeds and broken glass, our usual after-school hangout spot. Dylan and Stump were already there, standing stiff beneath a skeletal tree, their faces drawn, eyes hollow. I instantly felt unease and dread coming along. What the hell's going on? I asked. Part of me knew, though. My heart was already picking up pace. Stump wouldn't meet my gaze. Dylan just stared past me like something terrible was standing right over my shoulder. Gordy didn't answer right away. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a crumpled note, holding it like it might burn him. I found this in my locker this morning, he said. So did they. I'm guessing you didn't check yours. I unfolded the paper. It was damp, smudged, dark stains had soaked through in places, like it had been written with something thicker than ink. Did you all forget about the garage? I haven't. I want to play with your pain. I'm hungry for your screams. I need your scars. Here's a question. What snack is white, red, and resting forever sweet in Monument Park? A chill sliced down my spine. I stared at the writing, at the warped, scrawling letters still faintly glistening. My mouth went dry. Oh, what the hell is this written in? I asked, my voice sounding thin and far away. That's your concern right now. Gordy snapped, his voice cracked. Jesus, Jake. I looked up. Someone's screwing with us. What did that last part even mean? Snack? Monument Park? It makes zero sense. Gordy tried to cut in. Jake, if you let me talk, I can push him aside. Shut up, Gords.
Who?
Stump hissed. His voice was unsteady, eyes wild.
Who even knows what happened that night? Who could have sent this? Who is messing with us?
I backed away from them, my pulse hammering. No, this isn't real. We all agreed that whatever happened in the garage, it wasn't Jake, Dylan said, cutting me off. His voice wasn't angry. It wasn't sarcastic. It was dead, flat. It was real. You know it. I laughed, but it came out broken, too sharp, too loud. You're all in on this. This is just a sick joke, right? Come on, say it. You're screwing with me. Just admit it. No one moved. No one smiled. Dylan's eyes gleamed with something close to pity. Stump looked like he was about to cry. Gordy stared at me like I was the one losing my mind. And suddenly I felt like I couldn't breathe. Stop it, I snapped. Stop this shit. Tell me you're joking. Tell me this is just some twisted way to get back at me for that time I locked you all in the basement and played the Backstreet Boys tape on loop. Dylan stepped forward, slowly and deliberately. He put his arm around me. Jakey, no one's joking. I shoved him hard. Liar! You're all liars! Jake! Gordy barked, his voice cracking. This isn't a game anymore. Someone is threatening us. I looked at him in disbelief. Someone? Or something? Go on, say it, Gordy. You too, Stump and Dylan, say it. Say what you really mean. Gordy stepped closer, his eyes locked on mine. You saw it on the board. You saw what it called itself. I watched as his lips formed the name. Then the world tilted. The air thickened, sour and electric, as if the wind itself had inhaled a scream and never exhaled. Something was charging. A low, almost imperceptible moan seemed to rise around us, like children wailing and screaming through torn lungs. The stench of something sweet, sour and rotten, drifting in on the breeze. Burned sugar, spoiled milk, blood, dead meat, contrasting tones of innocence and decay. I stumbled back, nausea welling. My body knew what my mind refused to admit. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't imagination. We'd awakened something in that garage, and as much as we tried to forget it, it remembered us. Gordy pulled me out of my dread and terror. Jake, there's more. I heard my mom and dad talking last night. A boy was found dead near Monument Park yesterday. My dad told my mom he was the one who had to tell the boy's parents that. I looked at him. That what, Gordy? He pushed the words out like it was some painful chore that just had to be done. That someone ate a part of their son. I felt sick. A snack in Monument Park. This thing had already murdered some poor boy. What were we then, the main course? Over the next 3 weeks, 2 more boys were found dead. They would first go missing for a couple of days, and their bodies would be discovered. The first was Ian Merrill, a quiet kid from the grade below us who always wore long sleeves, even in gym class. The news said he was found near Miller Creek, face down in the mud, and rumors said, quote, pieces were taken from him, end quote. They didn't say what pieces, but we heard the whispers. Then came Tommy Ruiz, who was just 13. They found him behind the bowling alley dumpsters at dawn. The report said the scene was, quote, unusually violent, end quote. It didn't need saying. Everybody in town felt the truth. Whatever monster was killing these boys wasn't killing them quickly. Everyone claimed they didn't know anything, but by lunchtime the whole school was buzzing like a kicked hornet's nest. The next days blurred together. Police cars rolled through town in packs, lights always flashing. Parents yanked their kids indoors. Every morning the announcements began with the same warning. Travel in groups, report any suspicious behavior, do not be out after dark. It should have made us feel safer. It didn't, because every time I heard those words, something cold crawled up my spine. A whisper in the back of my skull, like a fingernail dragging across raw skin. We put this thing into the world. We are the reason these boys are dying, and at some point, it would come for us. It was a Tuesday, not long after they had found Tommy, that we decided to start fighting back. I found myself outside Mr. Wentworth's office. My body just went there, like muscle memory, pulling me forward before my mind could lock the brakes. I'd seen him a few times since that first session, brief check-ins, quiet nods in the hallway, moments that felt like standing on the edge of a confession without quite falling into it. I kept telling myself that talking was pointless, that no adult could ever understand, that all that therapy crap was for other people, but I kept drifting back anyway. Maybe it was the way he carried himself, steady, grounded, like he didn't need to wear a mask the way everyone else did. He didn't try to act cool or authoritative or pretend he had everything figured out. He just was, unapologetically. I guess I wished I could be like that. His door was slightly open when I got there, warm lamplight spilling across the hallway floor, turning the linoleum gold. The building was quiet after hours, every sound sharp, too loud in the stillness. He looked up when I stepped inside, and his expression changed in a way I couldn't quite decode. Surprise first, then something like concern. "Jake," he said, voice soft. "We didn't have a meeting scheduled today." I shrugged, suddenly feeling stupid for showing up. His office smelled faintly of cedar and old paper. Vinyl records lined one wall, books another. A framed poster of Miles Davis playing trumpet hung over his desk. The lamp cast a warm glow that pooled in corners instead of filling the room, shadows stretching long and soft. My eyes darted towards the Nirvana poster. He gestured to the chair opposite him. "Sit if you want." I did, staring down at my hands. I felt him watching, not judging, just waiting. "With everything that's been happening," he said gently, "I wouldn't blame you if you needed to talk. I hope you know we're doing everything we can to make you kids feel safe. You're following the precautions, right?" "Yeah," I muttered. Love being treated like a toddler again. Super fun. He didn't smile. "It's to protect you, at least until they find whoever is responsible." The words clawed their way up before I could stop them. "They can't protect us," I said, voice trembling. "No one can." He leaned back slightly, eyebrows tightening. "What do you mean?" I shook my head. "You wouldn't believe me. You would think I'm insane." He didn't rush in with the usual adult comforting crap. He just left the silence open, giving me space I didn't know what to do with. And somehow that pulled the rest of it out. "Why should I trust you?" I snapped. "You might be better than most of the assholes in this town, but you're still someone paid to poke around in my head. You don't care. If I told you what I did..." My voice cracked. "You wouldn't believe me." I could feel my hands shaking. I dug my nails into my palms, trying to anchor myself. "There's something hunting us," I whispered. "Hunting me, Dylan, Gordy, every kid in this town. And it's our fault. We brought it here. And nobody sees it. Nobody sees us. We're alone." My throat closed, tight and burning. "Sometimes I think if I just hurt myself enough, maybe then someone would pay attention. Maybe then they'd see how bad it really is." Wentworth lifted a hand, not a stop gesture, more like a soft lowering of heat before the room could ignite. "Jake," he said, quietly, firmly. "Stop." His voice shifted, lower, steady, almost soothing. "So, Jake, I don't think you're insane." He waited until my eyes met his. "I think you're hurting, and I don't think you know how to put that pain into words yet." I swallowed hard, unable to breathe. "You know," he continued, "people assume the worst kind of pain is the kind you can see. Cuts, bruises." His gaze held mine. There was something in it. Too deep, too knowing. "But the real wounds, the ones that shape us, they don't show. They live underneath the skin, and you carry them alone because you're afraid that if someone saw the truth, they'd never look at you the same way again. It's that intimate pain that burns the brightest, quietly. The pain you don't show anyone." He leaned forward slightly, voice hollowing into something almost tender. "Even though I'm an academic, I know there's more between heaven and earth than we understand. I don't doubt the existence of things we can't measure or prove, but whatever you're facing, whatever darkness you think is out there, fear won't help you fight it. You can't defend yourself against something you refuse to understand. And Jake, hurting yourself is never the option." His eyes were strangely vulnerable, almost pleading. "Give me a chance, Jake," he said softly. "Let me help you. You don't have to face it all alone." I looked away. Everything in me screamed to run. When I looked back, his eyes were locked on mine, and I saw a realization begin to form behind his gaze. Jake, you don't have to let your relationship with your mother define your life. I realized then he was still locked in his therapist mindset, despite his talk of between heaven and earth. As much as I admired his casual approach and what seemed like genuine interest in me, one question remained. How would he ever understand? I told you I don't care what happened with my mother. That's not what this is about, I said. He nodded. I noticed a slight disappointment in his eyes. I'll be here, he said, whenever you're ready to tell me what this is really about. I left before he could see the tear that slipped down my cheek. I made my way to the schoolyard to meet up with the boys after my conversation with Mr. Wentworth. Could I really trust him? I desperately wanted to. We needed an adult on our side, someone who wasn't an asshole, someone who didn't just brush us off like we were just kids with overactive imaginations. I would have to carefully consider how to approach him. I heard commotion nearby and spotted Stump surrounded by the usual pack of bullies pushing him around. I told you before, nothing ever sticks with Stump, but maybe that isn't quite true. Everyone has their limits, and I could clearly see he was in distress. I quickly found Dylan and Gordy, and we all went over to intervene. Look at that, Freckles pissed his pants. Maybe Mommy should have moved you a couple of classes down with the other babies, huh, Smarty Pants? The voice belonged to Chase, the undisputed king of assholes at our school. He had his usual gang of cackling, mindless followers egging him on. We all stepped between Chase and Stump. Fuck off, no one bullies Stump but us. Dylan, despite not quite measuring up to Chase, never let anything like that stop him. Oh look, the merry band of idiots. Are you here to change your boyfriend's diaper? Gordy stood behind Dylan, not saying a word. I could see him charging up, anger rising. I knew whatever he was going to say would make the situation explode. I pulled Stump aside while Gordy and Dylan provided a shield between us. He was shaking, visibly distraught. Dylan was barking back at Chase, and while the situation around us escalated, Stump simply whispered in my ear.
Jake, I don't want to be at the school right now. Can we go somewhere else?
I tried to comfort him. Don't pay attention to these assholes, Stump. He cut me off before I could finish. He was pale as a ghost.
It's not them, Jake. That thing. The scar.
He couldn't finish the sentence, as if mentioning the name might summon something.
I heard something in the school basement. I
was about to answer Stump when suddenly I heard Gordy's voice cut through the escalating noise. Sharp, deadly, fed up. Hey, Chase, maybe you're just jealous that Stump got moved up a class. The way things are going, you'll still be here trying to finish 9th grade while you're 50, you stupid fuck. I held my breath and awaited the disaster to come. We all knew how sensitive Chase was about being held back, mostly because his parents would relentlessly punish him for it and berate him, even while the rest of us were listening. I turned around in time to see the massive fist connect with Gordy's chin. I saw Dylan unsuccessfully try to step in and get pushed away with ease. I did the only thing that came to mind. I ran to get Mr. Wentworth. He quickly intervened and seemed to instantly get a grip on the situation and who had been the instigator. He took our side and sent Chase away to the principal's office. Gordy refused a visit to the school nurse. He was always tough as nails. Dylan went with him to get his injuries attended to. Everything seemed to be crashing down on us. Things were heading toward a breaking point, and we all agreed to meet at Monument Park after school to figure out what we were going to do next. The park sat at the edge of town, wedged between a row of identical split-level houses and the old drainage canal that cut through the neighborhood like a scar no one bothered to heal. The grass was thin and patchy, worn down by decades of kids who'd grown up and moved on. Rust chewed at the jungle gym, and the swings groaned whenever the wind pushed them, metal chains whining as if they remembered too much. Someone had spray-painted a sloppy anarchy symbol on the concrete near the basketball court, already half-faded by rain and sun. It smelled like freshly cut grass, hot asphalt, and cigarettes. Someone's older brother, probably leaning against the bleachers and pretending not to watch us. We gathered at the picnic table near the tree line, the one carved up with names and bands and hearts split clean down the middle. Nirvana was scratched into the wood, our doing, some time ago. None of us brought instruments. That alone said everything. Ever since the entire thing started, the music had gone quiet. Our dreams and hopes were put on hold. Survival had kicked in. Nothing else mattered. Gordy sat on the tabletop, legs dangling, his hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets like he was afraid of what they might do if left alone. Dylan paced in tight circles, kicking at pebbles, trying to burn off energy that had nowhere to go. Stump leaned against the trash can, arms folded, jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. I sat last, palms pressed flat to the wood, feeling every groove and splinter beneath my skin. Gordy broke through the silence. "So I overheard my dad talking again. It seems all the victims had scars on the part of their body that was..." He couldn't finish the sentence, but we all knew. Then he continued, "That must be why this thing calls itself the Scar Eater." We looked at each other and hesitated. I was the first to speak. "I don't have any scars." They looked at me, puzzled. Stump chimed in.
Not even a tiny one, like from cutting yourself chopping onions or whatever?
I shook my head. No, not a single one. Stump shifted nervously from side to side.
Lucky bastard.
Gordy lifted up his shirt and revealed a scar on his lower back. "I got this one from falling off a bike and onto a sharp edge when I was 7. I looked at Stump. He showed us a scar running down his arm.
I fell down from a roof and broke my arm. Bone was sticking out. My parents wouldn't let me out of the house for months.
Dylan was last. He hesitated, and I knew why. I'd known him longer than any of the others. I placed my arm around his shoulders. "You know, you don't have to." He finally nodded. "It's okay." He lifted up his shirt to reveal a scar running down the side of his stomach. "My dad gave me this the night..." His voice broke. He couldn't finish, and we didn't press him any further. For a while, no one spoke. Eventually, when the air felt too heavy to breathe, we asked Stump to tell us what he'd actually seen in the school basement. He didn't want to. I could see it in the way his shoulders hunched, like he was bracing for a blow that had already landed once and would land again the moment he spoke. But Gordy met his eyes, steady, grounding, the way he always did when things started to spiral. "Just tell us," Gordy said quietly. "We need to know." Stump swallowed hard, his eyes clouded with fear. His voice barely held together when he finally spoke. It was thin and trembling. It was like he was in a trance. His voice felt distant, as if it were somehow not his own, as if he were reciting something dictated to him, words he would never use, words that could only manifest from something unspeakably cruel and merciless.
"I heard them crying,"
he whispered.
"Screaming and crying. Boys, all of them were boys. I've never heard cries like that before. Desperate, begging, like something was ripping them apart from the inside out. But there was another voice beneath it all. Something else. Something that sounded aroused. Like moans of pleasure. It sounded like a man's voice, but not quite. Something was off. It was too sweet, too like a monster speaking with a mouth full of honey. Hostile, vile, but playful and seductive."
Dylan froze. His knees stopped bouncing. He instinctively inched closer to me. Gordy's fingers tightened around the neck of his beer bottle until his knuckles went white. Stump wasn't looking at any of us anymore. His eyes were fixed somewhere behind me, staring into a place I couldn't see. The spaces in between reality and fantasy, where that thing existed.
"There was a smell," he said suddenly, breath hitching. "That's what I remember most. Rotten but sweet, like candy left too long in the sun, mixed with something long dead."
A cold crawled up my spine.
"He showed me,"
Stump went on.
"Images. Oh God. Faces twisted and distorted in impossible ways, bleeding, hissing, and gasping for air that never comes, rattling as if their lungs were filled with tar. He didn't rush it. He lingered, like he wanted me to understand."
Stump's voice dropped, raw and hoarse.
"He feeds on their scars."
Gordy looked down at his hands. Dylan shook his head slowly, like denial alone might undo what he was hearing.
He licks them open,
Stump said.
Taste them.
He gagged, eyes glassy. Stump broke down, as if the words he was about to say next would shatter the fabric of everything that had always held us together. The park felt smaller now, claustrophobic, like a predatory thing was circling us, an ancient snake or reptile tightening its grip on the entire area. I asked quietly. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Stump, look at me. Tell me what you saw. For a moment he couldn't. Words came apart in his mouth, spilling out as fragments, static screaming through walls, teeth sinking into skin that wasn't skin anymore, the wet, patient sound of something chewing. Then his eyes snapped back to mine.
I saw Dylan,
he said. The words landed like a dropped weight. Dylan laughed once, sharp, disbelieving. That's not funny.
I'm not joking,
Stump said, panic bleeding into every syllable.
Not maybe, not someday. I saw it. He's coming for Dylan next. I felt it, like a finger tracing his scars, choosing where to start.
I grabbed Stump's shoulders, but he barely seemed to notice. What do you mean? How? How and when will it happen? Stump shook his head, holding back tears.
I don't know how or when. I just...
Dylan stood abruptly, pacing now, running his hands through his hair. That's bullshit, he finally muttered and sat down next to me. He was trying to conceal his fear, but I felt his frame tremble next to mine. That's just... But you must have misheard. Why me? It's... His voice broke down, and the fear he had bravely tried to keep in all spilled out in sobs. I put my arms around him and whispered in his ear. We're not letting anything happen to you, all right? Fuck this thing. Stump composed himself and continued.
And there was a name,
Stump whispered.
It came through the static of screams. I don't think I was meant to hear it. It slipped through by accident. One single voice among the thousands that cried out in pain said it, and I heard it.
He squeezed his eyes shut.
Archibald Rowan,
he said. The name sat between us, wrong and heavy, like something dragging up from deep water. Gordy was the first to speak. His voice didn't shake, but his eyes did. Then we don't run, he said. We don't pretend this isn't happening. We fight. I pulled Stump into a hug before I even realized I was moving. Dylan stood there for a second longer, then he joined us, stiff and scared, his arms wrapping around both of us like he was afraid to let go. We're going to get through this, I said, even though I had no idea if it was true. If that name means something, we'll figure it out, and we'll stop it, whatever it takes. I looked at Dylan. As long as we stay together. Gordy nodded once, firm. He stepped up, and we all circled Dylan. We won't let anything happen to him, Gordy said with a firm voice. And in that moment, terrified, shaking, bound by fear and guilt of what we had let into this world, we made a promise that felt heavier than anything we'd ever sworn before. A pact, not to be invisible anymore, not to let it take one of us out without a fight. Dylan and I were the last ones to leave the park. Gordy headed home first. Stump lingered for a bit, pacing in tight circles, then finally peeled off toward the cul-de-sac near the elementary school. That just left the two of us, standing beneath a flickering lamppost while cicadas screamed from the trees like they were trying to warn us of something. Neither of us said it out loud, but we both knew why we were dragging our feet. Home wasn't really home for either of us. For Dylan, it was his aunt, who tried in her own way but felt more like an older sister who'd gotten stuck with responsibility she never asked for. And his mom, she was there, physically, but not really there. Not since his dad, not since the night she tried to shield Dylan and paid for it with her body. Dylan never talked about it directly, but I'd seen the way his jaw tightened whenever anyone mentioned fathers. For me, it was my foster parents. Well-meaning, I guess, but distant. Everything about me was either a phase or something I'd grow out of. Music was noise, grief was something to be handled quietly, emotions was something boys weren't supposed to have. You need to toughen up. The world won't pity you. Words that had stuck with me. So we walked. The park was bathed in that late summer glow, warm, amber light clinging to the grass, fireflies blinking on and off like faulty stars. The air smelled like cut lawns and hot asphalt, and somewhere nearby, a sprinkler ticked rhythmically back and forth, like a metronome keeping time for a song we'd forgotten how to play. You remember the woods behind your old place? Dylan asked suddenly. I smiled before I could stop myself. Yeah, I remember, the waterhole with the swing set. We used to jump out in the creek laughing so hard our bellies ached. Yes, the creek. We swore it was a rainforest river, he added. We used to trail down it pretending we were in the jungle on expedition. We were idiots, I said. Yeah, he replied softly. But we were happy idiots. We talked about scraped knees and stolen cigarettes, about camping on rooftops and swearing we'd leave this town to see what the rest of the world had to offer the second we got the chance. About music, Nirvana, obviously, and the way Kurt's voice made us feel less alone, like someone out there understood what it meant to hurt without knowing why. But even as we laughed, the night felt off. Shadows stretched too long between the trees. The wind whispered through the leaves in a way that almost sounded like words. Somewhere deeper in the park, something cracked. A branch, maybe. Both of us flinched. That's when we reached the tunnel. It cut beneath the road like a concrete throat, swallowing sound and light. Graffiti crawled along its walls, layers of old names and crude drawings peeling over each other like shed skin. Dylan slowed to a stop. I hate this place, he muttered. You always have, I said. Yeah, well, I really hate it now. He stared into the darkness as if it might stare back. I nudged his shoulder. Hey, nothing's going to happen, not if we stick together. He hesitated, then nodded. Okay, yeah, together. The tunnel was cooler inside, with an earthy smell mixed with something else. Our footsteps echoed too loudly, stretched and distorted. Water dripped somewhere ahead of us, slow and deliberate. Then we heard it. At first I thought it was the wind, or maybe traffic overhead, but then it sharpened. Soft, broken sounds, whimpering, boys crying. Dozens of voices layered on top of each other, rising and falling like a sick lullaby. Dylan grabbed my arm. Jake. I hear it, I whispered. Behind us at the mouth of the tunnel something moved. A figure stood there, silhouetted against the dying light of dusk, too tall, too still. It began to inch forward, each step unhurried, deliberate. In sick and twisted movements, it crept closer. It moved eerily, like a badly made stop-motion figure. We were frozen in fear for a moment, and then it spoke. A voice like melted sugar poured over rust. I see you, inside and out. Sweet, sweet boys, let me tear you open. Let me drain your pain. The voice exploded into a sick choir of cries and screams. 1,000 voices at once were piercing my mind like needles. We ran, hearts racing. I was pulling Dylan behind me, refusing to let go as I dragged him along, but the tunnel didn't behave like a tunnel anymore. The wall seemed to stretch, the end pulling further away no matter how fast we ran. Faces twisted in agony peered through the concrete walls. The cries grew louder, closer, sobs, pleas, prayers, while footsteps slapped wetly behind us, gaining ground, inching ever closer. I could feel its breath at the back of my neck, warm, wet. Don't stop! Dylan screamed at the top of his lungs. His voice was drenched in fear. I grabbed Dylan's wrists and pulled him hard enough that he stumbled, nearly falling. I didn't let go. I couldn't. If I did, I knew he would be gone. I knew I would lose him forever. Our footsteps pounded against the tunnel floor, but the sound felt wrong. Too wet, too thick, like we weren't running on concrete anymore. Every step dragged. My legs felt heavier with each stride, like something clung to them. Thick and unseen, like wading through mud that kept rising. Ankles, calves, knees. The tunnel stretched even further now. I swear it did. The end, the faint circle of light ahead, pulled farther away the faster he ran, like it was retreating from us, like it didn't want us to reach it. Jake, why aren't we getting closer? Dylan's voice cracked behind me. I don't know, just keep moving. I shouted, but even as I said it, doubt crawled in, because something else was happening. Something worse. My thoughts didn't line up anymore. Memories flickered in and out like faulty lights, I saw my mom's corpse laughing at me, her dead eyes locking onto mine as she dragged me violently around the living room to horrible dissonant music while squeezing the air out of my lungs. Behind us, it came closer. Closer, ever closer. The footsteps no longer distant, no longer slow. They slapped against the ground with a sick, wet rhythm like bare flesh hitting something soft. Too fast now, too eager, violent and angry. As I felt it gain on us, the dark tunnel walls around us began to move and shift. At first, I thought it was just shadows, but no. Faces, it was hundreds of wailing faces pressed into the concrete, mouths stretched open in silent screams, eyes wide, bulging, begging, their skins fused with the tunnel walls as if they'd been pushed in and left there to set.
"Help us,"
one whispered. "Don't leave us," another sobbed.
"Stay."
A third breathed, its lips peeling back too far, revealing something between a grin and a scream. Their voices crawled over me, slipping into my ears, mixing with my thoughts, my memories, and self-perception twisted further. I couldn't remember how we got here. I couldn't remember why we were running. "Jake," Dylan said, his voice trembling. For a split second, I didn't recognize it. It sounded like one of them, one of those faces on the tunnel walls. I turned my head just enough to glance at him, and his face, it shifted. Like I was looking at him through water, like his features couldn't decide where they belonged, like he was slowly disappearing. "Don't, Jake, please don't look at me like that," he cried. I'm not. My voice came out fractured. For one horrible moment, I wasn't even sure who Dylan was. I wasn't even entirely sure who I was. But I knew one thing. Something behind us wanted to open us up, and it was almost there. A breath brushed the back of my neck and made my skin crawl, warm, wet, too close. I felt my mind start to slip away. "Don't stop, Jake, we have to keep going," Dylan screamed, his terrified voice tearing through the noise, anchoring me, barely, as I forced my legs forward. Each step felt like lifting stone, each movement slower than the last, like the tunnel itself was trying to hold us in place, feeding us to whatever chased us. I pulled all my strength together and sped towards the dim, dying light from the flickering street lamps at the exit of the tunnel. We burst out the other side like we'd been spat back into the world. The night snapped back into place. The park was quiet again. Normal. Too normal. We collapsed onto the wet, mildewy grass, gasping, laughing hysterically, and crying all at once, not knowing how to feel, hearts still racing in our chest. "Is that all you got, you dollar store boogeyman?" Dylan muttered under his breath. We both laughed, giggling like children. Sometimes you have to laugh in the face of fear if you want to keep your sanity. After our hearts had settled down, I looked over at Dylan. His face was half illuminated by moonlight. As his eyes met mine, for some reason, my heart started pounding again. Only this time it wasn't exactly fear. I felt my mind slowly slip back into place. "Hey, do you want to hang out on Friday? Just us, like we used to." I hesitated longer than I should have, and I noticed a hurt slowly creeping up behind his eyes. "Yeah," I said. "I'd like that." He smiled, and for just a second, as we were lying there in the grass under the flickering stars, I noticed our hands were still clasped. I gently broke the grip. It seemed for a moment he didn't want to let go. The following day, I dropped in 15 minutes too late for English class. I caught Stump's face, white and pale. He's trying to get my attention.
"Late again, Jake?"
Mr. Andrews stood at the front of the room, sleeves rolled up, chalk dust clinging to his fingers like dried blood. He was younger than most of the teachers, early 30s, maybe. He carried himself with a tired warmth, like someone who still believed words mattered even after the world kept proving otherwise. He was the only teacher who ever looked at my notebook and saw something more than doodles in the margins. I knew he was disappointed I didn't put in more effort. He shook his head as if he knew not to bother reprimanding me further. That day, he wrote a single word on the board. Wounds. "Literature," he said, turning to face us, "is obsessed with injury, physical, emotional, spiritual. Wounds are an almost essential part of any narrative. They represent something the characters need to resolve, something unhealed, trauma that begs to be explored and resolved." A few kids snickered. Someone in the back whispered, "Edgy." Mr. Andrews didn't smile. I raised my hand and asked a single question. What about scars? Scars? He contemplated the question before continuing. Think of scars as stories the body remembers even when the mind tries to forget, he continued. In Shakespeare, in Morrison, in Plath, pain is never just pain, it's a language. If wounds represent the unresolved, scars represent closure. We're going to be talking more in depth about that. He assigned us a short response. Write about a wound that never fully healed. Use metaphors. My pen froze. When his eyes passed over me, they lingered just a second longer than usual. Encouraging, gentle, knowing. Looking back now, it was as if he saw straight through me, saw the tears meant for no one but myself in the four walls of my bedroom. I never noticed then. He couldn't have known about my mom. No one at school besides Gordy, Stump, Dylan, and Mr. Wentworth did. Yet, thinking back now, he would have little hints here and there, in our conversations, in the books he encouraged me to read. I didn't write a word that day. After class, we all met up where we always did when trouble rained down over us, out by the old train tracks just beyond school property, where the world felt far enough away that no one could hear us think. The tracks hadn't seen a train in years. Rust had eaten through the rails, and weeds pushed up between the ties like the earth itself was trying to reclaim them. The trees surrounding the clearing had begun to bloom with spring, but something about them felt hesitant, like they were growing despite something, not because of it. Our old tree fort still stood nearby, or what was left of it, warp planks half collapsed, leaning like a memory that refused to die properly. We'd built it a couple of years ago, me and Dylan mostly, with Gordy pretending he was above it and Stump trying to, quote, optimize the structure, end quote. We lit bonfires here, gotten drunk for the first time on beers stolen from Stump's dad, sat under the stars while Gordy played guitar and swore we'd leave this town behind. It all felt like it belonged to someone else now, like a different life. We stood in a loose circle on the tracks, none of us quite able to look at each other for too long. The pressure was everywhere, in the silence, in the way we shifted our weight, in the fact that none of us had picked up an instrument in days. Stump spoke.
I remember where I heard the name,
he said. His voice was low, urgent.
Archibald Rowan. He was a serial killer.
That got our attention. A what? Dylan asked.
But that 16th century,
Stump cut in.
England. I read about him before. Thought he was just another footnote, just another serial killer out of many. But
the words got stuck somewhere in his throat.
Maybe it's best if I just show you.
Stump spread his notes out on a wooden bench like evidence on a crime scene. Photocopies, handwritten dates, crude sketches.
Rowan was a surgeon's apprentice, he said, but also an occult nut. This was back when people thought medicine and magic were basically the same thing.
He tapped a yellowed illustration of human torsos etched with careful lines.
He wrote his thoughts down, illustrated them, and they survive to this day. He believed scars were messages, like the body was writing down pain so the soul wouldn't forget it.
Gordy swallowed. That's messed up.
It gets worse,
Stump said.
He called scars gates, said they were inner pain hardened enough to be touched, studied burns, lash marks, old wounds, mostly on boys.
My stomach dropped. Why boys? I asked. Stump made a slight shrug with his shoulder.
According to his writings, boys hold more potential. They are taught not to cry, taught to be tough. It makes them bottle up pain. They are less likely to address their wounds, whatever that means. Orphans were his preferred victims.
Stump went on.
Kids nobody would miss. He didn't kill them at first. He cataloged them, measured scars, drew them, said scar tissue was, quote, the hardened memory of suffering, end quote.
Dylan's jaw clenched. And then?
And then he started making new ones,
Stump said quietly.
On purpose. He believed pain, enough pain, could open the door to something, a world beyond ours where pain is so intense it turns into pleasure beyond human comprehension. He kept a journal,
Stump continued.
The ledger of scars, diagrams, patterns. He thought if scars were arranged just right, they could align the soul, like tuning an instrument.
And Stump held his breath before finally saying it.
He started consuming scar tissue, believing it held special properties that would harden him, prepare him for the world he was hoping to enter.
I thought of the tunnel, the figure that had chased us, the voice, the way it listened, the way it inched itself into my pain, feeding on it.
During his last ritual,
Stump said,
Rowan carved the same sigils into himself, copied the patterns he'd made on the boys, and something answered. According to his writings, something latched itself to him.
I hesitated. Something? What do you mean? Stump continued.
This is the last thing he wrote before he was stopped. Quote, I have committed a most grievous error. There is no divine to be found. The thing within me shall not be still. It ceaseth not, nor have I the strength to stay it. It whispereth into mine ears, and feedeth my darkest desires. Yet in the end it shall devour my very soul, until naught remaineth of me. And only then shall it rest. I am but a passenger within mine own flesh, granted but fleeting agency at its pleasure. There is no joy to be had, only suffering beyond all mortal reckoning.
A chill went up and down my spine. What the fuck does that mean? Dylan cut in. Why did you say it in such a douchebag way? Stump sighed impatiently.
I read it directly from his notes. It's how they talked back then, dummy.
Dylan nodded. So this guy was absolutely insane, straight up basket case. Where is all this leading to, Stump? He died centuries ago. Stump stepped forward.
I was getting to that. When he was caught, he was hung and his body was burned.
Stump finished.
But after that, the killings didn't stop.
He slid another paper forward, a timeline. His voice was shaking.
I looked for similar patterns and sure enough, every few decades, he said, someone surfaces, different face, different name, same obsession, same victims, boys with scars.
The word scar seemed to echo. So he didn't die with Rowan, Gordy said softly.
No,
Stump replied coldly. We all felt silent for a while, just contemplating the mess we had landed ourselves in. The sky was bleeding out into evening, streaks of pink and purple dragged thin across the horizon, fading into something bruised and uncertain. The abandoned rails cut through the clearing like scars themselves, rusted, half-buried, stretching into the distance where the trees swallowed them whole. We stood there in the tall grass, the four of us, not quite facing each other, not quite able to look away either. Gordy nudged a loose stone along the track with the toe of his shoe, over and over, like he was trying to grind a thought down into nothing. So, he said finally, voice tight, we have an idea what this thing is. A vague one, at least. He glanced at Stump. Did you find anything about how to stop it? Stump looked like he hadn't slept in days. His hair stuck out in uneven angles, dark circles carved deep beneath his eyes. He shook his head slowly.
All I found were Rowan's writings, he said. And honestly, he reads like a lunatic who got lucky, or rather, unlucky. He didn't understand what he found. He just opened the door.
Gordy exhaled sharply, kicking the stone off the rail so it disappeared into the weeds. I don't get it. If this has been happening for centuries, same method, same type of victims, how has no one connected it?
They have, Stump said quietly, just not in a way anyone takes seriously.
We looked at him.
I found references, he continued. Fringe articles, weird occult forums. The same patterns keep showing up, but every time, people explain it away. Coincidences, copycats, differences in details.
He hesitated.
That's the odd thing. There's very few official sources on any of this. Most are writings and blogs that read more like fiction and theories. However,
Gordy cut off Stump with a hollow laugh. So we're fucked. That's it. That's the big conclusion. We're just waiting our turn. You're giving up? Dylan snapped, stepping forward. What happened to we'll stop this together? Gordy looked away, jaw tightening. I'd never seen him like that before. This was not our Gordy, the one who always had a plan, who always grounded us when things spun out. Now, he looked small, like something had cracked inside him. Stump raised his hand slightly, trying to hold the moment together.
I didn't say we can't stop it. I said I didn't find a way to stop the thing itself.
He swallowed.
But there's something else.
We waited.
From what I could tell, there's always a person, a vessel. The killings stop, at least for a while, when that person is caught or killed.
The words hung in the air like a bad smell. For a second, none of us reacted. Then Gordy turned and punched Stump in the arm. You idiot, why didn't you start with that?
Ow, I was getting to it, dickhead.
Stump snapped, rubbing his arm.
Jesus, let me finish for once.
Dylan blurted out almost automatically. That's what your mom told your dad last night. I chuckled, and I think I even saw the beginnings of a smile from Gordy. Everything almost felt normal for a split second. Then it didn't.
There's something off, though.
Stump continued, unfazed by Dylan's jabs as usual, his voice dropping again.
The pattern is consistent, every few decades, somewhere in the world, but I couldn't find anything in the last 40 years.
Gordy frowned. That doesn't make sense.
I know,
Stump said.
There should have been something, but there's nothing, like it just stopped.
Or no one found it, Gordy muttered. Maybe you missed it. Stump shot him a tired, irritated look.
I've been at this nonstop. Library, my parents' computer, everything. There aren't exactly neat databases for ritual murders tied to cosmic parasites or whatever the hell this thing is. Most of what I found was secondhand, and half of it was from people you wouldn't trust to tie their own shoes.
He trailed off, then looked at Gordy more carefully. Something shifted behind his eyes.
Gords,
he said slowly.
Your dad's a cop, right?
Gordy stiffened immediately. No.
Just hear me out. You could see if something similar happened.
No. Gordy repeated, sharper now. I already almost got caught listening in while he was talking about the murders. You want me to what? Walk up and ask for access to police records? You could try, Dylan said, stepping in. Stump's been killing himself digging this stuff up. The least you could do is... And what have you done? Gordy snapped, turning on him. Or you, Jake. This could get my dad fired. You think that doesn't matter? The words hit harder than they should have. I dropped my gaze, staring down at the rusted rail beneath my feet. I felt useless, like I'd been carried along this whole time, watching everything fall apart without doing a damn thing to stop it. Just a fly on the walls of hell. Fired? Dylan exploded. You think I care about that right now? It said my name, Gordy, my name. I can feel this thing. I can feel it getting closer every day. I don't have what you have. I don't have Stump's brain or your connections. I'm useless. All I have is this thing breathing down my neck every second, and... He stopped. Just stopped. All of us felt it. We closed in around him instinctively, forming a tight circle, shoulders touching. The air had gone cold without warning. The trees around us rustled softly, but there was no wind.
Gordy,
Stump said quietly, almost pleading now.
I know it's a lot, but if there's anything at all in those files, it could help. Even a name, a pattern, something.
Gordy looked at Dylan. Really looked at him. And whatever he saw there, fear, desperation, something fragile close to breaking, made his shoulders sag. I'll try, he said finally. Okay, I'll try. I swallowed, then spoke before I could stop myself. And if we find the person, the vessel, I look between them. What happens then? It just starts over again, right? Somewhere else? Stump hesitated.
I don't know,
he admitted.
But it's the only angle we've got.
The last light of the sun slipped behind the trees and the clearing fell into shadow. The tracks beneath us looked darker now, deeper, like something carved into the world a long time ago and never meant to heal. I thought of Mr. Andrews' words, scars are stories the body remembers, and some stories have a way of repeating themselves, like cruel circles forever unbroken. Friday came, and as I headed toward Dylan's place, I thought about how he never wanted any of us to visit. He always had an excuse ready, usually delivered with a shrug and a joke that shut the subject down. I knew why. I'd been there once and seen what was left of his mom. I don't even think Stump or Gordy had ever gotten the full story, but I knew. Dylan had told me once. His dad was abusive, and it escalated over the years. When his mom finally tried to protect him, When she finally stepped into character and said no, she paid for it with her mind and body. Dylan's aunt stepped in after that. She was more like an older sister than a parent from what he'd said, persistent but distant, trying but tired. And his mom, she was there but not quite, unable to communicate her love, trapped in her body, like a ghost left lingering, refusing to go away, always there like a reminder of the cost of love, a vegetable, as some kids would cruelly say. So when he asked if I wanted to come over, just the two of us, it felt like being handed something fragile, something I wasn't sure I was allowed to touch. Besides, something about him had seemed off lately. I felt it whenever he talked, something beneath his jokes, like he resented me for something. I hoped to figure it out. His room was at the end of a narrow hallway that smelled faintly of cigarettes and instant coffee. When he opened the door, I hesitated for half a second before stepping inside, like I was crossing a line. It was exactly the kind of room you'd expect from a teenage boy in the mid-90s, but more lived in than most. Posters covered the walls in uneven layers: Nirvana, Sonic Youth, Alice in Chains, The Cure, some half-torn flyer for a local show that had probably happened months ago. A single lamp on the floor cast a soft amber glow that made everything feel warmer than it should have been. There were stacks of records everywhere, on the floor, leaning against the wall, half-organized crates shoved beneath the bed, cassette tapes spilled out of an old shoebox. His bed was unmade, sheets twisted like he hadn't bothered fighting gravity that morning. The air smelled like fabric softener, dust, and something faintly metallic. Dylan moved through the room like he didn't know what to do with himself. He dropped onto the floor near the turntable and started flipping through vinyl with practiced fingers, but his movements were distracted, unfocused. He wasn't his usual loud, careless self. He was quieter, held inward, like he was bracing for something. When he finally settled on a record and slid it from its sleeve, I recognized the cover instantly. Ride, Today Forever. He placed it on the turntable with a reverence that caught me off guard. When the needle dropped and the Senon began to spill into the room, those drifting guitars, that slow, aching build, it felt like the air itself softened. "Didn't know you were into that stuff, Dill," I said, trying to keep it light. "Kind of surprising." He shot me a brief glance before looking back at the spinning vinyl. "Yeah, well, there's probably a lot of stuff you don't know about me, Jakey. I'm allowed to like more than just grunge, you know." I crossed the room and sat beside him, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. I picked up the album sleeve and studied it. The great white shark froze mid-lunge, rows of teeth bared, beautiful and terrifying all at once. "Never said you weren't," I said. "I'm just surprised, because I like this stuff too." That made him look at me properly, a look I hadn't seen from him before. "Really?" "Yeah," I said. "I love Ride, especially this track. The way the guitars come in all slow and wide, with the bass and the drums underneath. It makes me think of summer, those long, lazy days where you just ride our bikes until we got lost and didn't care, scrape knees, climbing places we weren't supposed to, sleeping on the school roof and watching the stars like the world wasn't waiting to chew us up." He nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said. "I remember that. Those were simpler times." We didn't talk for a while after that. We just listened. I let the music wash over us, thick and shimmering. For a few minutes, it almost worked. Almost let me forget the police tape, the whispers, the thing moving through our town, preying on boys like us. Dylan shifted beside me. Restless, I took a breath. "Not everything changes," I said. "We're still us. We're still friends. We'll always have the music. That doesn't..." He cut me off with a look that stopped the words in my throat. "Friends? Music?" He let out a hollow laugh. "Yeah, I don't know, Jake. I'm not sure of anything right now." I put my arm around his shoulders without thinking. He flinched instantly, pulling away like he'd been burned. The reaction was so fast, so instinctive, it hurt worse than if he'd said something cruel. Only he could make me feel that way. "Dill," I said quietly, "I know something's wrong. You're never this way unless something's eating at you." He stared at the wall for a second, then scoffed. "Eating at me? I know you didn't just say that." I couldn't help but force a laugh despite the seriousness of the situation. He joined me for a moment, then continued. A monster is stalking kids and eating them alive. The monster we probably unleashed. But nah, it doesn't bother me at all. He forced a grin. Kinda exciting, actually. Something evil lurks out there, and only the 4 grunge detectives can stop it. And apparently, I'm next in line to be eaten. I hope it chokes on me. He laughed, but it felt hollow, like his voice hinged on the last part, as if the stark reality of it all came crashing down on him. Stop, I said sharper than I meant to. You always do this, you joke the second things get real. We're going to deal with this thing, we will. Who knows if any of the things Stump saw and heard can even be trusted. It might be messing with us for all we know. I hesitated and continued. But that's not what I'm talking about. You've been different with me. I don't know if... He cut me off mid-sentence as if I had somehow struck a chord. His expression hardened, then cracked. That's it, Jake. You don't know. You think you see through everyone, the great poet who has everyone figured out, but you don't. Or maybe you're just too much of a coward to see it. To see what I... He stopped, dead in his tracks. His voice dropped, tired now, maybe realizing he had crossed a line not meant to be crossed. He continued. I'm sorry. Can we... just not today. I don't want to talk about the monster right now, and I don't want to talk about whatever you think is happening between us. He swallowed. Can we just for today, can we just be normal? I nodded. Yeah, I'd like that. I need that too. The rest of the evening blurred into something soft and indistinct, like a memory already halfway gone while it was still happening. One record bled into the next, ride gave way to slow dive, then something fuzzier, older, half forgotten and obscure. Dylan handled the turntable with careful hands, like the music was fragile, like it was sacred to him, something to be guarded with care. We cracked the window open just enough to let the smoke slip out. The summer air crept in instead, warm, carrying the distant sounds of the neighborhood settling for the night. Somewhere a screen door slammed, a dog barked once, then fell quiet. The world outside felt impossibly far away, like we were suspended in a pocket of time no one else could touch. Our universe. We talked about our fucked up families and how Dylan's aunt was dating half of the men in town. The beers went warm quickly, sweating in our hands, passed back and forth more out of habit than thirst. We barely drank them, just lifted them to our lips now and then, letting the bitterness linger like an excuse to stay still, to stay close. We laughed at dumb things, inside jokes we'd been carrying since we were kids, stories we'd told 100 times but still couldn't resist repeating. Dylan mocked my terrible rhythm guitar. I told him his bass lines always sounded like they were trying too hard to be cool. He flipped me off without looking at me, smiling without a care. The music kept building, layer upon layer, guitars folding in on themselves until the sound felt physical, like standing too close to a jet engine, like being wrapped in static and light at the same time. It filled every corner of the room, pressed against the walls, and vibrated through the floor. There was comfort in that thickness, in being drowned out, in not having to think. The cigarette smoke curled lazily in the dim light, catching the glow from the lamp and turning gold, then gray. Dylan leaned back on his hands, eyes half-lidded, letting the music wash over him. I watched the rise and fall of his chest, the way his jaw tightened when a song hit just right. I wondered what he was thinking, if he felt it too. That strange pull, that sense of standing on the edge of something unnamed, something dangerous. For a while, neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. The silence between us was heavy with things we didn't yet have the courage to say. Outside, something moved through the trees. A branch scraped softly against the house. I flinched just a little, but Dylan didn't notice. Or maybe he did and chose not to react. Either way, the moment held. At some point, we stopped sitting on opposite ends of the bed. I couldn't tell you when it happened, just that suddenly his shoulder was brushing mine, then resting there, warm and solid. Each time he shifted, I felt it. Every movement registering too clearly, like my body had tuned itself to him without asking. It frightened me. What I felt in that moment frightened me more than the monster haunting us. The music faded into a low murmur, and the TV took over, late-night static and reruns bleeding blue light across the room. We lay on the bed side by side, shoes kicked off, the air still thick with smoke and warmth. The ceiling fan clicked softly overhead. I turned my head without meaning to. Dylan was already looking at me. The light from the television washed his face in pale flickers, sharpening the line of his nose, softening everything else. His eyes were darker like that, quieter, less guarded. He didn't look away when he realized I'd caught him staring. His hand shifted on the bedspread, slow, careful, fingers inching closer until they rested just beside mine, close enough that I could feel the heat of his skin, close enough that it felt intentional. Electricity went through my entire body. Dill, you said you were useless, but you're not. You're the backbone, like a steady baseline. I don't know where I would be without you to hold it all together. He didn't respond, but I saw the words landed. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. I remember everything, the shallow rise of his breathing, the faint tremor in his fingers, the way he waited, not pushing, just offering the space, an opening. I didn't take his hand that night, not because I didn't want to, but because something in me was afraid that if I did, everything would change, that I wouldn't be able to go back, that naming it, even silently, would cause a shift in everything I'd comfortably kept at a distance. The love I'd grown up with had been two-sided, one soft, engulfed in music and closeness, the other treacherous, neglectful, selfish, and addicted. So I stayed still. After a moment, his fingers curled slightly, then relaxed. He didn't pull away, neither did I. We just lay there, suspended in the almost of the moment. Still, for that one night, in that room, wrapped in flickering TV light and shared history, the universe narrowed down to just us, two boys balanced on the edge of becoming, on the edge of losing something, or finding it. And whatever waited out there in the dark, whatever watched us, stalked us, breathed in our fear, it couldn't reach us here. Dylan didn't show up for school the following Monday. At first it didn't feel like anything, just an absence, a chair left empty, a name not called. But absence has a way of settling in, of spreading quietly, like something damp creeping through walls. The longer you ignore it, the more it takes hold. Every second he didn't show up felt like a punch in the gut. I remember the glances we exchanged, me, Stump, and Gordy, across the classroom during English. Quick, nervous flickers of the eyes. We knew something was off. Normally for Dylan, or any of us for that matter, skipping school wasn't out of the ordinary, but these weren't ordinary times. Mr. Andrews stood at the front of the room, chalk resisting between his fingers. Let's continue from last week's session. He wrote the word scar slowly across the board, each letter deliberate, pressed just a little too firmly, the chalk dragging faintly as if it resisted leaving the surface. A scar, he began, turning to face us, is what remains after the body closes a wound. His voice was calm, even measured in a way that felt practiced. It is not the injury itself, he continued, pacing slowly along the front row, but the evidence that something once broke the skin and was forced to mend. He paused, glancing over the class. Closure, he said almost thoughtfully, is often mistaken for healing. The chalk tapped lightly against the board in his hand, once, twice. But a scar is not necessarily restoration, he went on. It is adaptation, the body sealing itself imperfectly, permanently. He turned to face us all. In the simplest of terms, it is change, transformation. Something about the way he said it made the word feel heavier than it should have, like it meant more than what he was saying. So what does that mean in literature? He continued. Scars function as markers, proof of survival, yes, but also reminders. They anchor a character to a moment they cannot return from, a point after which everything is altered. He stopped moving then and just stood there, looking out at us. For a second, just a second, it felt like his eyes lingered too long, not on anyone in particular, just searching, studying, like he was waiting for something to reveal itself, or someone, I dropped my gaze to my desk, the varnished surface scratched with years of initials and half-hearted carvings. Someone had etched a band logo near the corner, faded now, barely legible. The kind of thing that used to matter, the kind of thing that felt impossibly far away. All I could think of was Dylan. My throat tightened. The question came before I could stop it. My hand lifted, slow, hesitant, as if something heavier than doubt was pulling it upward. "Yes, Jake." Mr. Andrews' voice carried easily across the room. Too easily. The classroom was bathed in that dull, late morning light, the kind that flattened everything into pale yellows and tired grays. Dust hung in the air, visible where the sunlight cut through the blinds. The radiator clicked softly beneath the windows. Somewhere behind me, a chair shifted. All familiar sounds, familiar sensations, yet everything felt different. I swallowed. "Is there, anything in the literature about..." I hesitated, the words catching like splinters in my throat. Then, before I could reshape them into something safer, they slipped out as they were. "Eating scars?" A few students snorted. Someone muttered "what the hell" under their breath. A ripple of quiet laughter passed through the room, then died just as quickly. Mr. Andrews didn't laugh. He barely even moved at first, as if the question had paralyzed him for a moment. Then he woke up, as if from a spell, and moved near the board, chalk resting lightly between his fingers, head tilted just slightly, as if the question hadn't surprised him, but intrigued him. "Not a common motif," he said at last, slowly. "At least not in any direct or literal sense." His tone had shifted. It was still measured, still calm, but there was precision to it now, like he was choosing each word more carefully than before. He set the chalk down and clasped his hands loosely in front of him, pacing once along the front row. "But literature," he continued, "is rarely concerned with the literal." He stopped and turned towards me, his eyes piercing mine with curiosity and something else I couldn't quite define. "Let's treat your question as a metaphor," he said. "An act of consuming what a scar represents." The room had gone quiet. There was an air of anticipation. "There is, perhaps, something almost tender in that idea," he went on. "To take into oneself the remnants of another's suffering, to absorb it, to relieve them of its weight." He paused, just long enough for the thought to settle. "It suggests intimacy," he added. "A closeness beyond ordinary empathy, not simply understanding someone's pain, but carrying it, making it your own." Something about the way he said intimacy made my skin tighten. He took another slow step. "Of course," he continued, almost lightly, "that is not the only interpretation." I felt the air shift ever so subtly. "One might also view it as an act of violation." The word didn't belong in a classroom, not like that. The way he said it, it felt too personal. "A scar," he said, picking the chalk back up, but not writing, just holding it between his fingers, "is not merely evidence of injury. It is the body's resolution, its attempt, however imperfect, to close what was once open." He turned slightly toward the board, then back again, as if the thought itself was more important than any notes he could write. "You see, Jake," he said, voice softer now, but somehow sharper for it, "scars are a natural part of the healing process. They are signs that we suffered, yes, but also that we lived through it." His eyes held mine. "The skin that was once damaged, soft, vulnerable, it becomes something else, hardened, resilient, altered, but intact." He let that sit for a moment. "If that is taken away, one could imagine what remains." A faint smile touched his lips, not kind or unkind, just knowing. "A wound that never closes," he said quietly. "Pain that never resolves, something held open, exposed, ongoing." The chalk snapped lightly between his fingers. No one reacted or moved. "Not healing," he added, almost as an afterthought, "but suspension." For a second, just a second, it felt like he wasn't speaking to the class anymore, like he was speaking through the lesson, through something too personal to name. He held my gaze a moment longer than necessary, then turned back to the board. "Now," he said, tone returning to something more familiar, "if we were to apply that to character development..." The spell broke. Chair shifted, someone coughed, a pen clicked, but the feeling didn't leave. From across the room, I could feel Stump staring at me, Gordy too. Neither of them said a word, and neither did I, because something about the way Mr. Andrews had answered, it hadn't felt like speculation, it had felt like recognition. During recess, they finally said it. The intercom crackled to life overhead, that familiar burst of static cutting through the noise of the cafeteria. Conversations faltered mid-sentence, chairs scraped. For a second, it felt like the whole building held its breath. Then the principal's voice came through. It was flat, detached, stripped of anything human.
"Students are advised to go straight home after school. A temporary curfew is now in effect. If anyone has any information regarding the disappearance of Dylan Mercer, you are urged to come forward."
There was no pause for emotion, no hesitation. This was simply procedure. Hearing his full name like that, spoken clearly, officially, like it belonged in a report or on a missing persons flyer, it hit harder than anything else could. It reduced him, flattened him, turned him into something that could be filed away, categorized, forgotten. Just another missing boy. A statistic, a case. Not Dylan. Not the green-eyed idiot who laughed too loud at his own jokes or never knew when to shut up, who would turn nothing into something just by talking long enough. Not the boy who made even the dumbest jokes land just because it was him saying it. Not the one who shared my headphones, shoulder pressed against mine, both of us staring at the ceiling while the music swallowed everything else until the room, the town, the future, all of it just went quiet. Not the boy whose dreams ran parallel to mine, twisted together, plans whispered like they might actually come true, getting out of here, seeing something bigger, becoming something more than what this place had decided we were. We weren't done. There was still so much left, so many records we hadn't heard yet, so many nights we hadn't lived, and now they said his name like it was already over. I refused to accept it. As long as he was just missing, there was a chance. I knew it. We didn't speak after the announcement. Not in the hallway, not at our lockers, and not even in the half glances we usually exchange when something felt off. The silence followed us like a shadow, stretching longer with every step until it became something we carried rather than something around us. There was never any question about where we would go. The tracks were waiting. The abandoned railway cut through the woods behind the school. The metal rails were dulled with rust, flaking and brittle, their edges eaten away by years of neglect. Weeds had forced their way up between the wooden ties, thick and stubborn, as if the earth itself was trying to reclaim what had once been imposed on it. Every step we took disturbed something, dry leaves crunching underfoot, brittle stems snapping softly, the ground uneven and shifting in places where roots had begun to break through. We stepped onto the tracks and stopped, forming a loose circle without meaning to. The space between us felt wrong. We all noticed the gap where Dylan should have been. It was in everything, in the quiet, in the way no one filled it, in the way the wind seemed to move through that empty space just a little slower, as if it lingered there. Gordy was the first to speak.
They said he's officially missing.
His voice didn't carry. It dropped straight to the ground between us, heavy and dull. I swallowed, my throat tightening. "Don't say it like that." He looked at me, his expression hard to read.
"That's what they said."
"That doesn't mean anything," I replied too quickly. "They say that when they don't know what's going on."
"You were the last one to see him."
The words came out of him before he could soften them. The weight of it settled immediately. I felt something twist inside me. "He was fine," I said, forcing the words out. "We just hung out, listened to music, that's it." Gordy didn't look away. "Yeah, that's it." There was something under his tone now, not fully accusation, but close enough to feel like it. My chest tightened. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," he said, his voice sharpening, "if something happened after that, maybe you should have noticed." The anger came fast, too fast. "Oh, right," I shot back, "because I'm supposed to predict when my best friend is about to get taken by something we don't even understand." "Best friend?" He seemed hurt, as if he'd always suspected I was closer with Dylan than him. "At least you were there," he snapped. I took a step closer without thinking. "Yeah? Where were you, Gordy? And whose idea was it to mess with that board in the first place? Gordy stiffened. I saw the hurt in his eyes, but my anger forced the next words past my lips. Don't, Jake. Just don't. No, let's. I pressed. You bought it. You push for it. You always push until everyone goes along with you. Every stupid idea always comes from you. Then when you get us out of it, you act like you did us all a solid.
You were all in, he fired back. Don't act like I forced you.
You did, I said, my voice rising. You always do this shit.
Enough.
Stump stepped between us, his voice cutting through the tension like something sharp and sudden. He looked worse than either of us, eyes sunken, shoulders tight, like he hadn't slept in days.
This isn't helping,
he said, his voice quieter now but no less urgent.
You think Dylan would want this? You think this is what he'd want?
The words hung there. Neither of us answered, because we knew Stump was right. The wind shifted through the trees again, colder now, dragging along the ground before slipping between us. For a moment it felt like something else moved with it, something just out of sight, keeping pace with the silence. Stump exhaled slowly, trying to steady himself.
We need to think, not tear each other apart.
Gordy looked away first, his jaw tight. Fine. I nodded, though the anger hadn't gone anywhere. It just settled deeper, heavier. Stump ran a hand down his hair.
Gordy, your dad, have you gotten anything?
Gordy shook his head.
No, I haven't found a way in.
He nudged a loose stone off the trail, watched it disappear into the weeds.
And he's been acting weird, more than usual. He barely talks about anything anymore, let alone the case.
I glanced toward the trees. Not just him. Everyone feels off. Teachers, people in town, even at the store. Stump nodded slowly.
Yeah, it's like something's wrong everywhere. Like the whole place is
under a spell,
Gordy muttered. None of us laughed because it didn't feel like a stretch anymore. It felt like the only explanation that made sense. Stump shifted his weight.
We should start thinking about who, if there's a person behind this. A vessel.
The words seemed to settle into the ground beneath us.
Someone close, he continued. Someone who can move around without being noticed.
There was a pause. Then he said it.
Mr. Andrews.
I felt it immediately. That same unease from the classroom creeping back in.
The way he talked today, Stump went on, about scars, it didn't sound like theory. It sounded like he personally knew what he was talking about.
Gordy nodded, slow and uncertain.
Yeah, I agree. Something about that was off.
I hesitated before speaking. Maybe, but...
What?
Stump asked. I exhaled slowly. Wentworth. They both looked at me. He's smart, he knows about trauma, psychology, all that, I said. If anyone would recognize something like this.
You think it's him?
Gordy asked. I shook my head almost instinctively. No, I don't know. He just doesn't feel like that. He's too calm, too open, like some kind of therapist hippie. Besides, he seems like one of the few adults in this town we can actually trust. Also, the school counselor, it's a bit too obvious, isn't it?
People don't usually look like what they are,
Stump said quietly. I didn't respond because part of me knew he was right. I'll talk to him, I said instead. Bring up the murders, bring up Dylan, watch how he reacts. If something's off, I'll see it. If not, maybe he can help. Gordy nodded. Okay. Some glanced between us.
There's still a good chance it's someone we don't even know, someone random. We can't lock in on one person.
Gordy took charge.
Then we get more information,
he replied.
That's it. That's all we can do right now.
Stump stepped up.
I found a dude on an online forum who seems to have knowledge about Rowan and the ritualistic killings he began. I emailed him and I'm waiting on a response.
Gordy scoffed.
He's probably just some perv.
Stump shook it off.
Maybe. It's not like I'm going to arrange a date with him, idiot.
Small-tempered snickers and giggles spread out among us, but quickly died down. Stump turned to Gordy.
Your dad. That's our best shot at anything real. Reports, timelines, something official.
Gordy sighed, rubbing his face.
I said I'll try.
Try harder,
Stump said, not harshly, but not backing down either. After a moment, Gordy nodded.
Yeah, okay.
He looked haunted yet determined. For For a moment, he even seemed like the good old Gordy. He looked at us. "This is the plan, then. Jake, you talk to Wentworth." I nodded. "Stump, you keep digging into Rowan. There has to be something we're missing. Maybe more of his writing survived. I'll find a way to get access to my dad's work database and look into Mr. Andrews and any potential suspects, see if something fishy comes up." We stood there for a while after that, the plan settling between us. It wasn't solid, it wasn't safe, but it was something. The wind moved through the clearing again, low and restless, brushing against the trees, slipping through the broken structure of the fort, whispering across the rusted rails beneath our feet. I looked down the tracks where they disappeared into the woods. The shadows there seemed deeper than before, and for a brief, terrible moment, it felt like whatever had taken Dylan was already ahead of us, waiting, watching, letting us believe we were catching up, letting us believe we still had time. I went to see Mr. Wentworth the next day after math class. He'd spent the entire lesson on probability, percentages, outcomes, variables stacked on top of variables until the board was filled edge to edge with numbers that were supposed to make the world make sense. If this happens, then that follows. Clean lines, predictable outcomes, the comfort of knowing that, given enough information, everything could be calculated. But all I could think about was Dylan. 48 hours. That number sat in my head like a countdown I couldn't stop. What were the odds of someone still being alive after that? I tried to approach it the way the teacher had shown us, tried to force it into something structured, something I could solve. If a person goes missing, what percentage are found? How many are alive? How quickly do those numbers begin to drop? But the math wouldn't hold. My mind wouldn't stay inside the lines. It kept slipping, rewinding, replaying. Was there some combination of words I could have said, some combination of actions, some exact sequence, some fragile alignment of timing and honesty that would have changed everything? The numbers on the board had blurred into meaningless symbols. The teacher's voice had faded into something distant and hollow. Probability didn't account for this. It didn't account for regret, for the sickening weight of knowing that somewhere in the infinite variations of what could have been, there might have been one, just one, where Dylan was still here, and I had missed it. My thoughts looped until they seized up completely, like a machine pushed past its limits, gears grinding against each other until nothing moved at all. By the time the bell rang, I didn't feel like I was in my body anymore, just something hollowed out. Mr. Wentworth's office looked the same as it always had, and for a moment that sameness almost undid me. The books were still arranged with that careful, deliberate order, spines aligned, subjects grouped like everything in the world could be categorized if you just tried hard enough. The binds were half drawn, letting in soft, fractured bands of late afternoon light that stretched across the room and settled over the desks like something calm and controlled. Even the smell was the same, coffee gone slightly cold, paper and something herbal underneath it all. Lavender, maybe, something meant to soothe. But the longer I stood there, the more I felt it. Something had shifted, not in the room itself, but in the air. It felt held, like the space between breaths, like something was waiting, not impatiently, not aggressively, but with quiet certainty. He looked up as I stepped inside, and in that brief moment where our eyes met, something flickered behind his determination. "Jake," he said, his voice warm but softer than usual. There's a weight to it now. "Sit down, I'm glad you're here." The words landed gently, too gently. "I've been thinking about you." I moved toward the chair and sat, the wood creaking faintly under my weight. My hands rested in my lap, fingers interlaced just to keep them from shaking. For a second I almost let myself sink into it, into the calm of the room, into the illusion that this was just another conversation. But I forced myself back. That wasn't why I was here. I wasn't here to be comforted. I was here to watch, to test him. "You expected me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Why?" Wentworth leaned back slightly, his movements unhurried, fingers lacing together as if he had all the time in the world. "I know your friend is missing," he said. "Dylan." Hearing the name spoken out loud in that room felt wrong, too clean, too contained. "I was concerned about how you might be handling it." His voice was soft, careful, almost paternal. I let out a dry breath, something sharp and brittle that almost passed for a laugh. About as well as anyone would. I said, if their best friend had been taken by a serial killer. The shift in his expression was subtle, but it was there, a faint tightening around his eyes, a slight narrowing of focus.
Jake, he said carefully, we don't know that's what this is.
I held his gaze, refusing to look away, watching, measuring. You don't think it's connected? I asked. He didn't answer immediately, he just studied me, really studied me, like he was trying to decide something.
I think, he said slowly, that something is happening in this town, something serious, but when we attach it too quickly to a narrative, especially one driven by fear, we risk losing sight of what's actually in front of us.
His tone was steady, grounded, professional, yet still with that unmistakable undertone of worry.
You've talked about Dylan before,
he continued, his voice softening slightly.
There's a gravity to the way you speak about him.
I swallowed. I've known him since I was a kid.
And now he's gone.
The words were quiet, soft, but they landed heavy. And there's nothing I can do, I said, the control in my voice starting to fray. It's my fault. Our fault. Something changed in him then. His posture shifted forward, attention sharpening, like something in what I said had hooked.
Jake,
he said, more gently now,
I feel like we've had this conversation before. We talk, you allude to something being wrong, you show signs of guilt over something, but you never quite let me in. I'm afraid that there's a limit to how much I can help you, if you won't be honest with me.
The room seemed to close in slightly, the edges of it drawing tighter. I hadn't expected him to push me this soon.
This isn't just fear, he continued. It's specificity. It has shape, a name, and that means it has a source. Maybe I was wrong to assume this was all about your mother. If that's the case, I apologize. Did something happen between you and Dylan?
I was at a loss for words, and he seemed to take notice. My eyes caught his, and for some reason, I couldn't look away. Something behind his professional facade began to crack.
I recognize that look you've been carrying.
The words took me by surprise. What look? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced briefly toward the window, toward the thin strips of light cutting through the room, as if searching for the right way to say it.
Guilt,
he said finally.
The kind that keeps replaying moments long after they've passed.
Something in my chest tightened.
I've seen it before, he continued. I've worn it.
I frowned slightly. What do you mean? Wentworth's posture shifted ever so quietly. The professional distance softened just a fraction.
When I was about your age, he said, I had a best friend.
The words landed differently than anything else he had said so far. He never talked about himself like that.
He and I were inseparable, I suppose is the word people would use. We spent most of our time together, talked about everything, or at least, I believed we did.
He gave a faint, almost humorless smile.
There's always more beneath the surface than we realize.
I stayed quiet. Something in his tone had changed. It wasn't rehearsed anymore. However strongly he tried to compose himself, I sensed a great hurt behind his words.
One day, he continued, I found him at his locker after school. He was clearing it out, books stacked in his arms, papers folded too neatly. There was something off about it. I remember thinking that.
His eyes drifted slightly, unfocused now, not looking at me, but at something just behind me, some distant, all-consuming moment long past.
I asked him what he was doing. He said he was just getting organized, getting ahead of things.
A pause.
He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes.
The room felt quieter, smaller.
I felt it,
Wentworth said softly.
That something wasn't right, that there was something underneath what he was saying, and for a moment I almost asked, almost pushed, almost told him he didn't look okay.
He inhaled slowly.
But I didn't.
Words hung in the air, heavy.
I told myself I was overthinking it, that I didn't want to make things awkward, that if something was wrong he would tell me.
He looked back at me now. There was something in his eyes that hadn't been there before, something raw behind his usually composed gaze. "He went home that afternoon," he said. "And, well, let's just say he didn't come back to school the next day or any day after that." The air left my lungs in a slow, quiet exhale. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "I spent years," Wentworth continued, his voice quieter now, "running through that moment, that hallway, that locker, trying to find the exact combination of words I could have used, the exact tone, the exact question that would have made him stop, that would have made him stay." My chest tightened. He had pinpointed exactly what I was feeling. Wentworth composed himself. "It's why I decided to dedicate my life to helping kids like him. Kids like you." Silence settled between us again, but this time it didn't feel suffocating. It felt shared, and something shifted inside me. The distance I had been holding, the careful wall I'd built to keep him at arm's length, it cracked, just slightly. He trusted me with that, trusted me with something real, something that hurt, and for the first time since I walked into his office, I felt something other than suspicion. I felt seen, understood, even. This was the moment. I could still stop, still deflect, still keep it buried where it couldn't be judged or dismissed. But then Dylan's face surged up in my mind, not just as he had been that night, but as he had always been. The kid with scraped knees and a crooked grin, racing me through the woods behind our houses, daring me to keep up. The boy who laughed too loud, who filled every silence until it didn't feel like silence anymore. And then it shifted, bled into the memory of him sitting on his bed the morning after our night together. The same boy suddenly still, his green eyes searching mine for something I hadn't given him, something I'd missed. And behind it all, like a stain spreading through both past and present, came the other thing. The tunnel, the voice, the shape that had followed us, learned us, chosen us, until I couldn't tell where my best friend ended and where the horror had already begun to take him. If ever there was a time to put my mistrust in people aside, this was it. So I told him. I started from the beginning, the Ouija board, the feeling of something answering, the voice sweet and rotting at the edges, the patterns, Rowan, the way it fed, the way it chose, and Dylan, marked, taken, gone. I watched him the entire time, every breath he took, every small adjustment in posture, every flicker in his eyes, waiting for something to break. But nothing did. When I finished, the silence between us wasn't empty. It was dense, considered. Wentworth exhaled slowly, his fingers stapling lightly in front of him. "I see," he said. That was it. No disbelief, no shock, just acceptance. "You're not going to tell me I'm crazy?" I asked, the words coming out quieter than I intended. He shook his head gently. "No, I believe you believe it, Jake." The phrasing caught in my chest. Not "I believe you," "I believe you believe it." "And that matters," he continued, his voice steady, but softer now. "Because whatever you're experiencing, it's real to you, and it's shaping how you move through this." Part of me recoiled at that. It felt like he was placing it in a box, labeling it, containing it. I guess despite everything, he couldn't help the part of himself that was scholarly and composed. But he wasn't dismissing me, and right now, that was enough. "You can't let it paralyze you, because if there is still time, if there is even the smallest chance, then what matters is what you do next, not what you failed to do before." I stared at him, and for the first time, something inside me loosened. "I want to help you," he said. "And what you're describing, while extreme, is not entirely outside the scope of what some people study. There are people who believe in metaphysical beings capable of what you describe." My attention sharpened immediately. "What do you mean?" "I have contacts," he replied. "Academic circles, researchers who deal in fringe theories, cult traditions, ritualistic patterns, historical anomalies. Most of it is dismissed, yes, but not all of it is without merit." He held my gaze, steady and unwavering. "I can reach out, see if anything aligns with what you've told me. I hesitated, still watching him, still measuring. But the desperation in me, the part that needed something, anything to hold on to, leaned forward. "Why would you do that?" I asked. His expression softened again, something almost genuine breaking through. "Because you came to me," he said, "and because you shouldn't have to carry this alone. Because I can't let myself fail again." He paused. "And because Dylan may still be alive." That cut through everything else. "What?" "In cases like this," he said, "if there is a pattern, there is often a delay, a window before escalation. Whatever is out there, we know it takes its time. It relishes in the pain it inflicts on its victims." Hope flared so sharply it hurt. "So I can still—" "You can still try," he said. The room felt warmer, though nothing had changed. Or maybe I had. Wentworth reached into his desk and pulled out a small slip of paper, writing something quickly before sliding it toward me. "My number," he said. "Call me anytime, day or night." I stared at him. "That's not normal." A faint smile touched his lips. "Neither is this entire situation, is it?" Then softer. "I would rather you reach out than sit alone with this kind of weight." His eyes gleamed with regret, with desperation, as if he was still weighing all the possible options, all the possible things he should have said to save his friend. I folded the paper carefully and slipped it into my pocket. "Thank you," I said, and I meant it, even if a part of me still didn't fully understand why. As I stood to leave, I glanced back at him. He was already watching me, still focused. "Jake," he said. "Yeah?" "We'll figure this out." I nodded. I had done my part. I'd come here to see if Mr. Wentworth could be trusted, if I could allow myself to trust him and finally ask for help. I walked out of his office not realizing what awaited me, but with the trust that, despite all of it, I wouldn't be facing it alone. We all met up at the abandoned train tracks the next day, the rusted rails stretched out in both directions, catching the last of the evening light in dull, broken streaks. The thick and wild weeds between the tracks brushed against my legs as I walked through them, whispering softly like they were passing something between themselves. The trees loomed closer than I remembered, their branches heavier now, leaves trembling faintly even though the wind had died down. It felt like the whole place was holding its breath. Gordy was already there when I arrived, standing on the tracks with his hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets. He looked thinner somehow, like the last few days had carved something out of him. His hair hung loose in his face, and he didn't bother brushing it aside. Stump sat on one of the wooden ties, hunched over, picking at the splintered edge with his fingernail. He looked worse now. His usual restless energy dulled into something tight and frayed. They both looked up when they saw my approaching.
"You talked to him?"
Stump asked. I nodded. "Yeah." That got Gordy's attention. He glanced at me, something sharp flickering behind his eyes. "And?" I hesitated for just a second. "I think we can trust him," I said. "Wentworth, he listened, didn't shut me down, said he knows people, academic types, people who look into this kind of stuff." Gordy let out a short breath through his nose, something halfway between disbelief and frustration. "You think we can trust him?" "I do," I said, more firmly this time. "He didn't act weird, not like Andrews, not like whatever else is going on in this town. Gordy, we need someone like him on our side. We tried doing this alone, and see what happened." Gordy scoffed. "What happened, Jake? You mean we let Dylan get taken? Just say it. Why don't you just say it?" Stump cut in before things could escalate.
"What did you tell him?"
"Everything," I answered. The word hung there. Gordy's jaw tightened. "Everything?" "Yeah." "You just, what, walked into his office and spilled all of it?" "I didn't have a choice," I snapped. "We don't have time to play it safe anymore." Gordy shook his head slightly, pacing a step along the rail before turning back. "Or maybe we don't have time to start trusting the wrong people." "He's not the wrong person," I said, my voice rising despite myself. "You don't know that, Jake." "I know what I saw," I shot back, "and I know he's trying to help." "Or he's just trying to tell you what you want to hear." The words hit harder than they should have, maybe because I thought he knew me well enough to know I didn't put my trust in people lightly. Before I could respond, Stump pushed himself up and stepped between us.
I got something,
he said quickly. We both turned to him. What? I asked. He ran a hand through his hair, glancing between us like he was trying to decide how to say it.
That guy I told you about, the one I found online? The forum guy who'd been tracking similar cases.
Yeah, Gordy said.
He emailed me back.
That got our attention. Stump swallowed, his voice tightening slightly.
He said there are cases, victims tied to the same patterns, same kind of deaths, same age group.
A pause.
But not all of them had scars.
The words seemed to settle wrong. What? I said. That doesn't make sense, Gordy added. The whole thing is about scars.
I know,
Stump said.
That's what I thought too, but he was pretty clear. Some of the victims, no visible scars at all.
A cold weight settled in my chest. Then why them? I asked. Stump shook his head.
He didn't say, or maybe he doesn't know, but he thinks it means something, like we're missing part of it.
Gordy exhaled slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. Great, so it's not even consistent. Besides, that dude could be wrong. They could have had scars in places you wouldn't notice.
There's more,
Stump added quickly, not acknowledging Gordy. We both looked at him again.
He said he's close to finding something, parts of Rowan's writings, stuff that was thought to be lost.
That made my stomach drop. What kind of stuff? I asked. Stump shrugged.
He didn't specify, just that if he finds it, he'll send it to me.
The wind moved through the trees again, a low, restless sound that seemed to circle us. We don't have time for this bullshit. We need answers now, Gordy exclaimed.
I know, I'm doing everything I can,
Stump said immediately.
I'll keep digging. Whatever this thing is, it's bigger than we thought.
I looked down at the tracks, the rust flaking beneath my shoe. No scars, I muttered. Then how is it choosing? Neither of them answered, because we didn't know.
What about your dad?
Stump asked, turning to Gordy.
Any progress there?
Gordy stiffened slightly. I told you, I'm working on it.
Working on it how?
Stump pressed. I don't know yet, okay? Gordy snapped. I can't just walk up and ask him for police files, then figure something out. I said, the frustration slipping out before I could stop it. We need that information. Gordy turned on me. You think I don't know that? Then do something about it, I shot back, because right now you're the only one who can. I said I'm trying. It doesn't look like it. I talked to Wentworth, and you can't even talk to your dad? The words hit harder than I had intended. I knew Gordy was afraid of his dad. I knew he was strict with him and that they didn't have the best relationship. Gordy stared at me for a second, a sharp hurt flushing across his face. Yeah, he said slowly, because you've been doing such a great job, right? Running off to talk to your therapist while the rest of us actually try to figure this out. That's not what I... No, go ahead, he cut in. Trust him, tell him everything. See how that works out for you. That's not fair, I said, my voice tightening. Neither is any of this. None of this is fair. You told me this was my fault, that I... And you know what? Maybe it is. I'll just have to live with that if I'm not taken by that thing. He snapped. I didn't know what to say. I felt it all fall apart. Years of friendship, shared dreams. Everything seemed to be coming undone. The words got stuck in my throat before they finally limped out like an injured animal. Gordy, I never meant to... This... He cut me off before I could even finish. Don't, Jake. There is nothing you can say to make this better. Stump looked between us, his expression tight, but he didn't step in this time. Gordy shook his head, backing away slightly, his eyes not leaving mine. He turned and started down the tracks, kicking loose gravel as he went. Stump hesitated, glancing at me, then back at Gordy.
I'll check in when I hear back from that guy,
he said. I nodded, but the words barely registered. Stump followed Gordy, leaving me standing there. The track stretched out ahead of me, empty. The wind moved through the trees again, carrying that same restless whisper. A couple of days passed after the fight at the tracks, though past wasn't really the right word for it. Time no longer felt normal. Days blurred together into a suffocating haze of sleepless nights, whispered conversations at school, and the constant sense that something terrible was creeping closer while everyone else pretended not to notice. I sat alone in my room that evening, elbows on my knees, staring at the floorboards. The house had gone quiet hours ago. Somewhere downstairs, the television murmured faintly through the walls, distant enough to feel unreal. My room smelled of dust, cigarettes, and old vinyl sleeves. Clothes were scattered across the floor. A crooked stack of records leaned beside the turntable, Rides Today Forever sitting on top. I looked away almost immediately. I squeezed my eyes shut and pressed my palms against them until sparks burst behind my eyelids. It didn't help. Nothing did. Every thought circled back to him, to Dylan, to the possibility that he was still alive somewhere, to the possibility that he wasn't. And worst of all, the possibility that I could have saved him. The questions gnawed at me until my thoughts felt raw from overuse. I couldn't stop replaying the tunnel either, the footsteps behind us, that horrible syrupy voice slipping through the dark. "Sweet child." Suddenly, I realized I was breathing too fast. The room felt smaller somehow, shadows stretching strangely in the corners. Every creak of the house sounded loaded with meaning. I stood abruptly and began pacing. I couldn't do this alone anymore. The thought didn't feel like a realization as much as it felt like surrendering. My gaze drifted toward my jacket hanging over the desk chair. Mr. Wentworth's folded slip of paper still sat in the pocket. I'd carried it around for days without admitting why. Because despite everything, despite Gordy's warnings and the growing paranoia poisoning all of us, I trusted him, and I desperately needed to trust someone. My hands trembled slightly as I dialed the number. The phone rang 3 times. Then,
Yes?
Wentworth sounded startlingly awake for the hour, calm, relieved almost. Something inside me loosened painfully at the sound. My throat tightened. I don't know what to do anymore. For a moment, only static hummed between us. Then Wentworth spoke softly.
Jake, is that you? Okay, slow down for me. You're safe right now. Start there.
I sat back down on the edge of the bed, gripping the phone tighter. I can't stop thinking, I admitted. About Dylan, about what I should have done differently. I keep replaying it over and over, and every version ends the same way. Wentworth let the silence settle before answering.
That's grief trying to bargain with reality,
He said carefully.
Your mind is searching for control where you had very little.
It doesn't feel like grief, I muttered. It feels like something eating me alive.
Jake,
He said quietly.
You've been carrying more than anyone your age should have to. All of you boys have.
Something about the way he said it nearly undid me. Gordy barely talks to me now, I admitted. Stump's disappearing into research like he doesn't even sleep anymore. And Dylan, my voice faltered. I can still hear that thing. The silence that followed felt heavy with concern.
You don't have to sit alone with this tonight,
Wentworth said at last.
I think you should come over. We can talk properly.
I hesitated, but before I could answer, he added,
And Jake, I found something.
My grip tightened around the phone. About what?
The Scar Eater.
Hearing the name aloud sent a cold shiver through me.
I reached out to some contacts after our last conversation.
He continued.
Folklorists, historians, researchers who specialize in occult traditions.
And?
There are references, fragmented accounts across different cultures and time periods, different names for it, but the patterns are disturbingly similar to what you described.
My stomach tightened. So it's real. A pause.
I think,
Wentworth said carefully,
that whatever this is, it deserves to be taken seriously.
That uncertainty frightened me more than certainty would have. I looked around my dark room again, the records, the stale air, the ghost of Dylan lingering in every corner, and suddenly staying there felt unbearable. Okay, I whispered. Wentworth's voice softened immediately.
Good. Come over. We'll figure this out together.
Together. The word hit something deep inside me. After we hung up, I sat there another minute staring at the dead receiver while silence crept back up into the room. Then I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. Outside, the night air felt colder than it should have for spring. The streets were empty, washed in pale amber street light and deep roots of shadow. And beneath the wind, in the trees, I could have sworn I heard it again. That voice, soft, sweet, patient. I arrived at Mr. Wentworth's house exactly when we agreed. By then, he felt like our last real hope, the only adult who believed us without hesitation, who didn't look at us like we were stupid kids caught up in some fantasy. He opened the door almost immediately, glancing briefly into the empty street before motioning for me to come inside. The house caught me off guard. For some reason, I had never imagined what Mr. Wentworth's place would actually look like, but this wasn't what I would have expected. The entire place felt trapped in another decade. Warm amber light spilled from old standing lamps onto dark wood-paneled walls. The furniture was heavy and worn, all deep browns, faded oranges, and textured fabrics that looked untouched since the 70s. Shelves overflowed with vinyl records, paperbacks, and little ceramic trinkets gathered over decades. A lava lamp glowed dimly in the corner beside an overflowing ashtray, and somewhere in the house I could hear the soft crackle of music playing low through old speakers. "You said you found something about the Scar Eater?" Wentworth nodded as he sat down opposite me in a recliner chair, studying me with an intensity that immediately made my stomach tighten. "It's old, Jake," he said carefully. "Older than most written history. Different cultures called it different things. It has had different shapes, forms, and desires. Most recently, it seems to have attached itself to Rowan Archibald and his obsession with scars." A cold unease settled into me. "But it can be stopped," he continued. "I'm sure of that." The words loosened something in my chest. For the first time in days, I felt the faintest flicker of relief. "But before we get into all that," he gestured casually toward the kitchen. "How about a drink? Beer?" I blinked at him. "I'm 14, remember? Pretty sure you're not supposed to offer me alcohol." He laughed softly, leaning back in his chair. "Go on, Jake. You don't have to pretend with me. I know what you kids get up to when adults aren't around. I did the same when I was your age. You don't have to pretend with me." Despite everything, I smirked a little. "Whiskey and cola then, I guess." "Good choice." He disappeared into the kitchen while I looked around the room again. Old concert posters hung crookedly along the walls. Fleetwood Mac sat beside the turntable. The lighting was low enough that the shadows pulled thickly in the corners, making the room feel smaller and strangely insulated from the rest of the world. When he returned, he handed me a glass and settled back into the recliner opposite me. "Cheers." I laughed quietly and clinked my glass against his. "Cheers." The whiskey burned hot down my throat, stronger than I expected. We talked for a while after that, maybe 15 minutes, maybe less. At first, everything felt normal. Wentworth kept talking about folklore, ancient rituals, fragmented stories spread across centuries. I tried to focus on his words, but gradually, something started feeling off. It was subtle at first. The room felt warmer, my thoughts slower. His voice seemed farther away somehow, as though he were speaking to me from the end of a long tunnel. I shifted uneasily on the couch and tried to answer him. What exactly did you find out about the Scar Eater?" The words came out slurred and thick. A sharp pulse of panic hit me instantly. I tried to sit forward properly, but my body suddenly felt impossibly heavy. My limbs reacted half a second too late, like they no longer belonged to me. Wentworth leaned forward slowly, then he placed his hand on my thigh. Every instinct in me screamed to move it away, yet my body wouldn't respond. "They never really see you kids, do they?" he said softly. His voice had changed. That was the first thing I noticed clearly. It had become sweeter somehow, smoother. Each word slid across my skin like warm syrup. "But I do," he continued. "I see all of you. The loneliness, the shame, the hunger to matter to someone. Your dreams, your pain." A cold tear spread through me. Dylan's words echoed through my mind. "You think you see through everyone." I looked up at him through blurred, dizzy vision, and suddenly I didn't recognize him anymore. It wasn't that his face had physically transformed all at once. It was worse than that. It was like some illusion had started peeling away. His smile stretched too wide. His eyes looked impossibly dark, hollow in a way human eyes shouldn't be. Even the way he moved felt wrong now. Every gesture slow and deliberate, like a predator trying not to scare wounded prey before the final bite. Then I recognized the voice. "Sweet child." The memory hit me so hard my stomach dropped. "I jumped from body to body," he whispered.
From name to name, I wear them for a while until they rot and break down. Ever since he released me, I've been here. All I need is a suitable host to continue the cycle. Then I can feed.
My mouth barely worked anymore. But I don't have scars. For a moment, something almost like pity crossed his face.
Oh, Jake,
He murmured gently.
you do.
He pressed his hand flat against my chest directly over my heart.
It's never the skin that matters. It's what lives underneath. Your grief, your loneliness, your aching little dreams.
His smile deepened.
You have no idea how beautiful it is to me, but you will see.
Tears blurred my vision as panic consumed me completely.
You told me everything,
He whispered.
about your mother, about Dylan, about the hurt you carry around every day like a stone tied to your ribs. Gaining your trust took time, but it was worth it.
His fingers pressed harder against my chest.
I know you better than almost anyone now. Your friends don't really see you. Your foster parents never did. But me,
His voice softened lovingly.
you're already becoming part of me.
I couldn't breathe properly anymore. The room tilted violently around me as darkness began creeping into the edges of my vision.
I promise I'd help you,
He whispered.
and I will. I have such beautiful things to show you, baby blue eyes. Such sweet things waiting for you. So sweet they might just hurt. Dylan's there too, you know.
If I had been physically able to, I would have broken down. Dylan was gone. The words left my lips weak and desperate. I wish we never played around with that board and summoned you. He cut me off.
Summon me. I can't be summoned, child. I was always here, waiting.
Fear consumed every inch of me as consciousness slipped away. Then suddenly, I was rising upward, floating helplessly above my own body, through the ceiling, through the rooftop, soaring high above the sleeping town. The streets below looked tiny beneath the moonlight. Tiny houses, tiny people, tiny lives continuing on, completely unaware that something monstrous was feeding in the dark beneath them. And still, his voice followed me upward.
Oh, sweet child, don't cry. I'll lick your scars softly, nibble at them slowly, and finally eat them. Your pain is so beautiful. Hush now, hush. Let me take it all away.
I woke later to agony so overwhelming that for several seconds I couldn't even understand what I was feeling. Then I realized he was biting into me. The scream that tore out of my throat barely sounded human. His hands moved across my bare stomach while he ripped pieces from me with horrifying, intimate slowness. Warm blood spread across my skin. Every nerve in my body burned with unbearable pain as he fed from me like a starving animal. I begged him to stop over and over. Time stopped existing inside that room. Minutes stretched into eternities. My throat turned raw from screaming until eventually no sound came out anymore except weak, broken gasps. His hands caressed my abdomen almost tenderly.
Open your eyes,
He whispered sweetly.
This is the best part. The moment when the begging finally ends. When you understand, there's nothing left.
I forced my eyes open to look at him. Nothing was left of the man I thought I knew. Only darkness, only an unimaginable sick evilness looming behind his manic gaze. His eyes lit up with excitement.
Soon, the pain goes away. Like I promised you. When you let yourself go, right before you drift off to sleep. There it is.
And the pain began to fade. At first I thought I was dying, but something far worse was happening. I felt myself emptying from the inside out like invisible hands were reaching deep inside me and pulling pieces away one by one, not flesh, me. The first memories to disappear were the painful ones, my mother vanishing for days while I sat by the window waiting for headlights that never came, calling hospitals when I was 8 because I thought maybe she'd been hurt somewhere, finding her body beside the bathtub, the crushing realization that whatever she'd been searching for in those needles had mattered more than staying alive for me. As those memories dissolved, relief flooded through me so suddenly it almost felt peaceful. Years of grief loosened their grip around my chest, but then the good memories started slipping too. Her dancing with me in the kitchen to old records while we sang off-key together, waking up in the safe and warm embrace as she carried me to bed after I fell asleep on the couch, camping in the backyard beneath cheap plastic stars she'd hung from the tent ceiling so I'd never sleep under an empty sky. The warmth attached to those memories faded first, and the memories themselves. Panic bloomed inside me. No, please. But it kept going. Dylan sitting cross-legged on his bedroom floor, excitedly placing headphones over my ears so I could hear some song he swore would change my life. The shy little smile he always tried to hide whenever I admitted he was right. The two of us laying beside the creek as kids, staring up through the trees and talking about everything and nothing all at once. Then even the painful memories of him started disappearing too. The hurt in his eyes when I didn't take his hand, his terrified voice as we rushed through the tunnel, even those memories mattered because they were with him. And now, they were being eaten alive. Gordy teaching me to throw a proper punch behind the school gym while pretending not to care if I got it wrong. The way he'd always walk slightly ahead of us like he thought it was his job to protect everyone. Stump hunched over his notebooks at 3 a.m, muttering theories to himself while we practiced in Gordy's garage. The band, our awful garage rehearsals, broken strings, buzzing amps, the smell of sweat, cigarettes, and stale beers. Laughing so hard we couldn't finish songs properly. Those tiny moments where we actually sounded good and looked at each other like maybe we could become something bigger than this town someday. All of it started slipping away piece by piece. Faces became blurry, voices faded, entire years of my life collapsed inward like they had never happened at all. That was the worst part, not the pain, not the fear. It was feeling myself disappear while I was still conscious enough to know it was happening. The Scar Eater wasn't just taking suffering, it was devouring everything connected to it. Love, hope, friendship, every beautiful thing hidden inside the pain, until finally almost nothing remained except a cold, endless emptiness stretching through me where an entire life used to be. An ocean of memories reduced to a quickly evaporating puddle. And once it was gone, all that remained inside me was an enormous, endless emptiness. So profound it felt colder than death itself. I felt myself beginning to let go, felt myself sinking into the dark at last. But somewhere, impossibly deep beneath all that emptiness, something still burned. One tiny ember refusing to die. One final thought. Despite everything, I still wanted to live. A bright light greeted me as I opened my eyes. For a moment I simply stared upward, blinking against the harsh fluorescent glow that spilled across the hospital ceiling. Everything felt distant and unreal, as though I were looking at the world through a thick pane of glass. Then a sharp, burning pain flared through my abdomen and dragged me fully back into reality. My hand instinctively moved to my side and found layers of bandages wrapped tightly around the wound where Mr. Wentworth had bitten me. I lay there for several minutes trying to untangle my memories. They came in fragments, broken pieces that refused to fit together properly. I remembered Gordy shouting my name somewhere in the darkness. Then there had been a gunshot, sirens in the distance, and finally an endless stretch of cold black nothingness. Every time I tried to think beyond that point, my mind recoiled as if touching a hot stove. A nurse checked on me shortly after. She explained that I had been unconscious for nearly 2 days and that I was lucky to be alive. Not long after she left, my foster parents arrived. The relief on their faces hit me harder than I expected. My foster mother wrapped her arms around me carefully, afraid of hurting me, and for once, I didn't pull away. We had never been perfect together, but looking at the exhaustion in their eyes, I realized they had spent 2 days wondering if I would ever wake up. Whatever distance existed between us felt insignificant compared to that. Later that afternoon, Gordy and Stump came to visit. The moment they stepped into the room, I understood that none of us had escaped untouched. Gordy looked exhausted. The skin beneath his eyes was dark and bruised from lack of sleep, and there was a stiffness in the way he moved that I had never seen before. Stump looked even worse. He kept wringing his hands together and glancing toward the corners of the room as if expecting something to emerge from them. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. We simply stared at one another, each silently confirming that the others were actually alive. It should have felt like a victory. Instead, it felt like survivors taking attendance after a disaster. Dylan's absence sat heavily between us. Nobody mentioned him at first. We didn't have to. He lingered in every silence and every glance. There should have been 4 of us in that room. The fact that there weren't felt impossible to ignore. Finally, I broke the silence. I owe both of you an apology. Neither of them said anything. I was wrong, I continued quietly. Especially about you, Gordy. His eyes lowered immediately. I blamed you for everything. For Dylan, for the Scar Eater. I needed someone to be angry at because it hurt too much to be angry at what actually happened. The room remained silent except for the steady beeping of the monitor beside my bed. Before I passed out, Wentworth told me something that got their attention. He said the Scar Eater couldn't be summoned. Not really. People think they call it, but it's always there. It existed long before Rowan, long before any of this. I swallowed hard. So none of this started with you. Gordy stared at the floor for several seconds before speaking. I know that. But the words lacked conviction. I could hear the guilt buried underneath them. I should have listened to you, I said. Instead, I blamed you because it was easier. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Gordy reached over and hugged me gently. Stump followed. We stayed like that for a while in silent embrace before they broke away. We all screwed up, Gordy said softly. I nodded. Maybe that was the truth of it. None of us had handled things well. We had pushed each other away and let fear make decisions for us, but we had done our best under the circumstances, and somehow we had ended up here, bruised, traumatized, missing a friend, but alive. Eventually Stump cleared his throat and pulled a thick stack of papers from his backpack.
We figured it out,
he said. Over the last 2 days, he had been talking with the guy researching the lost writings of Rowan. Together, they had uncovered something important. The Scar Eater wasn't truly interested in scars themselves. Physical scars attracted it only because of what they represented. The thing fed on pain, trauma, abuse, the wounds people carried inside themselves long after their bodies healed.
The scar is just a doorway,
Stump explained.
What it wants is the suffering attached to it.
The realization sent a chill through me. Suddenly, every pattern made sense. Stump revealed that the killers connected to the Scar Eater shared histories of abuse. Many of the victims did too. The thing wasn't hunting random people. It was following pain from one life to another, like a predator following a scent. The recovered writings revealed something else. Rowan himself had been abused by a man he trusted when he was young. His obsession with scars had not begun as academic curiosity. It had begun as an attempt to understand his own wounds. Reading his words felt less like studying a scholar and more like reading the journal of someone desperately trying to make sense of his suffering.
The same thing kept happening,
Stump said.
Again and again.
Victims, abusers, more victims, the cycle repeating endlessly. That discovery led Gordy to investigate Mr. Wentworth's past. Using records from his father's department, they uncovered decades-old reports that painted a horrifying picture. Mr. Wentworth had endured years of severe abuse as a child. Hospital visits, investigations, injuries that should never have happened. Looking at the faded photograph Gordy handed me, it was difficult to reconcile the frightened boy staring back at me with the monster that had been hunting us. He was 12 in that picture, Gordy said quietly. The room fell silent as I studied the photograph. The boy staring back at me looked terrified. There was fear in his eyes, the kind that no child should ever have to carry. He didn't look evil, he didn't look dangerous. He looked like someone waiting for help that never came. For all the terrible things Mr. Wentworth had become, there had once been a frightened child trapped in a nightmare of someone else's making. The Scar Eater hadn't found a monster, it had found a victim and settled itself inside wounds that never had the chance to heal, and turned that pain into a useful vessel.
When we figured it out,
Gordy continued, breaking the silence,
we knew where you'd be.
His voice grew quieter as he spoke, and he kept his eyes fixed on the floor.
We thought he'd take you somewhere personal, somewhere connected to him. Turns out he still lives in the house where his dad abused him all those years ago.
So you went to the house? I asked. Gordy nodded slowly.
I convinced my dad to come with me.
I couldn't help raising an eyebrow. You told him everything?
Not exactly.
Despite everything, the corner of Stump's mouth twitched upward.
He left out the ancient evil parasite part.
The brief smile vanished almost as quickly as it appeared. None of us were really in the mood to laugh. The weight of everything that had happened was still sitting heavily on our shoulders. Gordy looked away toward the hospital window before continuing.
When we found the entrance to his basement, we heard screaming.
His voice sounded distant, as if he were reliving the memory while he spoke.
We followed the sound and eventually found you.
My stomach tightened immediately. Fragments of memory surfaced from the darkness. Teeth, blood, the smell of damp earth and rotting wood, the feeling of something ancient and hungry standing over me.
You were, down there with him,
Gordy said quietly.
My dad ordered him to stop.
Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Gordy swallowed hard.
He didn't.
The silence that followed felt oppressive. Even the steady beeping of the heart monitor seemed muted somehow. I already knew what came next, but hearing it aloud felt different.
My dad shot him.
The memory returned instantly, the deafening crack that had echoed through the tunnels, the sudden collapse of everything that followed, the darkness swallowing me whole. The monster was gone, but so was the frightening child he had once been. It seemed the last shred of humanity in him disappeared when the Scar Eater took over. Yet, I still swear, some relic of it had peeked its head out during our conversations, a kind glint in his eyes, a word here or there, soft and quick fading tonal shifts in his voice, something authentic, something beyond the predator. Or maybe I just told myself that to not feel like he had manipulated me from the start. I'll never know. As evening settled beyond the hospital window, the conversation gradually faded away. None of us seemed eager to fill the silence. We sat together listening to the distant sounds of the hospital and the steady rhythm of the monitor beside my bed. Somewhere beyond those walls, life continued as though nothing had happened. Cars drove by, people ate dinner, the world kept moving. As the years passed, we slowly drifted apart. It wasn't dramatic. There were no arguments, no falling out, just life doing what it always does. Gordy was the first to leave town. Stump followed not long after. We still talked from time to time, but the years stretched longer between conversations, and eventually those conversations became memories themselves. Gordy became a cop, just like his father. Stump found work as a researcher, chasing answers to questions most people never thought to ask. And I stayed behind. Part of me never really left that spring and summer in 1994. Even if I had wanted to move on, I wouldn't have known where to go. Some wounds heal into scars. Others become places you live inside. No matter how many years passed, a part of me remained trapped in this town, buried somewhere between the dimly lit streets, the endless rows of copy-paste houses, Gordy's garage, and the creek where Dylan and I played as children. Every corner held a memory. Every familiar landmark carried the weight of the things we lost there. The years accumulated around me, but those moments remained untouched, preserved somewhere beyond the reach of time. As for the Scar Eater, I still feel it sometimes. usually in the small hours of the morning when the world is quiet enough to hear old ghosts moving through the walls. I feel the memory of that tongue against my skin, unnaturally warm and slick. I feel those dull teeth tearing into my flesh, the wound on my side never truly healed. Thin layers of skin cover it now, pale and fragile, but it never feels entirely like my own. Every so often it splits open again without warning, bleeding just enough to remind me that it is still there, a mark left behind by something that should never have existed. And I know it still exists. Perhaps not in the way it once did, perhaps not in flesh and bone, but sometimes when the house settles around me at night, I hear it, faint whispers threading through the darkness, that syrup-sweet voice rotted beneath its false kindness, calling my name from somewhere just beyond sight, waiting, patient as ever. There's only one thing that keeps the darkness from swallowing me whole. Maybe it is unhealthy, maybe it is cruel, maybe all I am doing is reopening an old wound over and over again, but it is the only comfort I have left. So I close my eyes, and then I'm back in Dylan's bedroom. The air smells faintly of cigarettes, old carpet, and summer heat trapped inside the walls. Rides sent in drifts softly from the speaker, filling the room with that strange mixture of sadness and beauty I was too young to understand at the time. Outside, the town carries on without us, but in here, none of it matters. For a little while, there is only Dylan and me. We talk about nothing important, music, school, whatever happens to drift through our minds. Thinking back now, I can't remember most of the conversations. The words have long since faded. Sometimes I wonder if I even remember the room correctly anymore. Maybe the song playing wasn't Senin. Maybe the curtains were open instead of closed. Maybe some of the things we talked about belonged to different afternoons entirely. Memory is a fragile thing. The more often you revisit it, the more it changes. But I remember the feeling. I remember how easy it was to be around him. I remember the comfort of that room and the quiet certainty that for a few hours at least, nothing could touch us. Some details have disappeared with time, but that feeling remains untouched. Eventually the room grows dark. The television casts flickering blue and white light across the walls, throwing restless shadows across the ceiling. Dylan turns toward me, his face illuminated by the glow of the screen. For a moment he simply looks at me. Even now, after all these years, I remember the uncertainty in his eyes, the vulnerability, and the quiet hope hidden beneath it. A question hangs between us, unspoken, but understood. His hand rests beside mine, close enough, waiting. Maybe I don't remember every word we exchanged that night. Maybe I've forgotten entire conversations. Maybe my mind has polished the memory smooth over the years, sanding away its rough edges until only the parts I wanted to keep remain. But I remember that moment. I remember the space between our hands. I remember knowing even then that something important was being offered to me. And so I return to this memory again and again, not because it brings me peace. The truth is that it hurts every single time. The warmth I find there belongs to a life that no longer exists, to a version of me that is long gone, and no matter how many times I revisit this place, I can never truly return to it, never fix my mistake. I am only chasing echoes, trying to rekindle feelings that vanished long ago. But for a few fleeting moments, lying there in the dark, I can almost believe otherwise. And this time, as well as every time after, for as long as my heart continues to beat and the darkness continues to whisper, I take his hand. Alright, so this story is 3 hours long. I've been recording for 2 hours. Took a break at some point, but I've been reading for 2 hours. I hope that I can finish the rest of the story in the next hour, which will be tomorrow. I'm going to bed. However, for the sake of my mind still being fresh when I'm giving my final thoughts, I'm going to record my final thoughts starting now, halfway through the story. You're hearing this at the end of the story, but the last line I read to me was, every second he didn't show up felt like a punch in the guts. That's how far I am right now. However, I have read this story before, start to finish. Simon, or Simon, I actually don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm going to say Simon. Simon Elsvor sent me this story on email, asked me to look over it, give him feedback. At the time, there's a couple things here that were repeated. So if you were listening very actively, you'll notice that he mentioned the thing about Dylan's mother and his aunt, 2 paragraphs about 20 to 25 minutes apart. That was probably a mistake. I probably should have commented that when I was reading the story to give feedback. There was like a typo or 2. But overall, I haven't made that many mistakes while reading the story, which Simon just writes in the way that I read and talk. So it works out for me. We are a great narrator-author combo. Simon's stories are great. There's many on the channel. I actually don't know if I have a playlist. If I don't, I will try to make one on the channel. He's done Bright Yellow Terror. He's done one that I cannot recall the name of, but I can recall the thumbnail of. It was a face, skull, red thumbnail. It was a great picture. Anyways, that's besides the point. I'll talk more about that after I actually finish reading the story. Let's talk about some of the things that happened so far for me, in the part that I've read so far here for you. Firstly, Kurt Cobain. This story starts with Kurt Cobain dying. I was too young for that, I think. Yeah, I was way too young for that. By too young, I mean I didn't exist when Kurt died, so I didn't listen to Nirvana and whatnot. One of the lines in the story, however, was, it was talking about how we could be so affected by someone we've never met before, the loss of someone we've never met, who we just idolized. In my time, on this corporeal realm, the musicians that I've lost that I did listen to was XXXTentacion and Juice WRLD. Now, of course, we also lost Mac Miller, Lil Peep, many others whom I didn't really listen to or follow that much. Lil Peep, I listened to some music after he died. Mac Miller, I listened to the Circles album after he died. However, X and Juice, 1 year apart from each other, I believe. Those were different. I'm going to start with the Juice WRLD one, because it impacted me slightly less. I remember where I was for both of these. I remember for Juice WRLD, I worked part-time as a housekeeper when I was in high school, and I was at work. I just finished cleaning the bathrooms, and I was about to go clean the public gym for the hotel, and I got a text right as I came out of finishing the bathroom, about to put my mop bucket away, from my friend Andrew at the time. And he said to me, he sent me a screenshot and said, "Hey, did you know that Juice WRLD died?" And this is, again, like I said, this is a year after X died, and I loved Juice's music, and I knew how much talent the kid had. And I can say kid now because I'm older than he was when he died now. But his ability to freestyle and rap and sing without pause, the amount of music that the man was able to churn out, he was a machine of just good music. There's clips of it, not clips, there's videos of him rapping, freestyling for 1 hour straight. I think there's 2 videos of him doing this, and it never sounded bad. All of the freestyle from minute 0 to minute 60 was really good. All the way through. It was really impressive. I heard Lucid Dreams and All Girls Are the Same like 1 to 2 months before he blew up, and I was so glad he did. He deserved it. In his music, in his interviews, in his progression through fame, you could see his health declining. You could see him gaining weight, and you could see him falling asleep and nodding off in interviews. You could see him talk about his drug usage. He had a collab album with Future, and the first thing he said to Future when they met in the studio was, "You were the reason I started drinking lean." and I believe he was in like middle school, if not ninth grade, when he started to drink lean. And Future said that he didn't know how to feel about that at a later date. And the usage of those drugs and the people that he had around him, that just didn't seem like they tried hard enough. Maybe I can say that because, I liked his music. It was sad. That was a really sad death to seize in the middle of an airport. Maybe there were fans of his who were there at that airport who might have seen it. What an awful, awful situation. He was so bright. He had such a beautiful career in front of him if he could have stayed clean. The story, although realistic in this way, I don't like its portrayal of them drinking constantly. But kids like this, yeah, Simon portrayed it absolutely, completely correctly. But the other death, Juice, I was really sad he died because I really liked his music and I was really excited for more music to come out, and I thought he was a good guy. He was a pretty nice dude, all things, considered. He had a drug problem, but other than that, everything that ever came out about him was pretty positive. He was a really nice guy. He was a sweetheart. The Kid Leroy, he said that Juice WRLD took him under his wing, and the Kid Leroy made many songs about Juice WRLD's death. Yeah, but XXXTentacion, and this is more similar to Kurt Cobain, who also had a lot of stipulations on his name. Again, I never met X, of course, and I was sitting on my cousin's couch in Tennessee. I was visiting them at the time. I was sitting on the couch. I was looking at my phone. I was 16, and I saw the news pop up. I don't recall exactly where. I think it might have been on Instagram. I think it was on Instagram. But there was a news that X had been shot. And I saw that, and I didn't know how to feel. I really just hoped that it would, hope that he had been shot like in the stomach, in the leg, in the arm, that he would go to a hospital. It's fine. He'd be fine. It was just a thing. It was, it happened, but it was nothing fatal. And perhaps it's best to give context here. When I was younger, very young, like 11 to 14, really, I was kind of a piece of garbage, to put simply. Not just a piece of garbage in the way that kids are pieces of garbage. I was a real piece of garbage. I made people cry. I was very mean. I was exceptionally mean. I'm just gonna say that much. I don't want to make myself seem like a demon on here, but I found X when I was about 15. At the age of 15, I look back at the past 4 years of my life, 11 to 14, and thought, why am I such a god-awful person? And I didn't know the answer to that question. I didn't ask myself to judge myself. I didn't ask myself because I was mad at myself. I didn't ask myself because I felt guilty. I just asked myself because a question came up in my mind. And I had no answer. I genuinely did not know. And in that time, in that 15 years old period, for that year, more or less, I was pretty conflicted. I was like, what do I do now? Should I not be such a piece of garbage? And I found X on the bus. I was, back then I didn't really listen to rap music that much. I didn't listen to hard music or anything like that. No grunge like the kids in this story are. I listened to pretty singy, songy, R&B, pop type music. Not mainstream, but low-key Jeremy Zucker, who's popular now. I listened to him back in the day. Anyhow, I listened to softer songs, and I was on the bus, and Robert, he gave me his headphone back in the days when we had wired headphones. He gave me one headphone. This was the bus in the morning, we were going to school. And he played Look at Me. And I'm thinking, wow, what a song. If you know XXXTentacion, you've heard Look at Me. I'm not going to repeat the rest of the lines. And I thought, yeah, that's That's a song you got there, Robert. That really woke me up this morning. Thank you. And then he played Jocelyn Flores. And, again, if you know that song, it's from the album 17, his most infamous album. It's not infamous, very popular album. It was a very beloved album. It really changed hip hop for a lot, actually, that album. Not a lot, but a little bit. Question mark changed hip hop a lot more. But in that album, he, Jocelyn Flores, I'm praying, want to put 10 shots in my brain. I've been tripping about some things I can't change. Suicidal, same time I'm tame. And those are the first lines in that song. I listened to it, and at the time, as someone who's conflicted and quite not happy, it resonated with me a lot. I really liked that song. And I thought, wow, this is really good. And then Robert, dropped the boom boom on me and said, that's the same person. I'm like, what the frick you mean that's the same person? No, Robert, it ain't. And that was how I got introduced. Anyways, X had a lot of stipulations on his name. There were a lot of allegations against him, and he was going to court for a lot of things. And, it's hard to say that he was a perfect person or he was an angel or that he was as kind as Juice WRLD was. For a lot of his life, he he definitely wasn't. He stabbed people, he lived on the streets, he grew up on the streets, he did the street thing, that unfortunately happens to a lot of young people in impoverished neighborhoods. So that's also part of the reason that, when this guy dies and you feel bad, he did do bad things, like how bad should you feel? But one of the things that I saw with X, because I didn't follow X just with his music, I followed his career. I followed him as a person. And, you can actually see this, his progression, really, in life, through his hair. His hair color really presented it quite well. He started with black hair when no one knew him, underground, just starting to make music with Ski Mask and all that, and, still underground. And then he did the half blonde hair thing, half black hair thing, very crazy, very hyper rage music. And then he did his gray hair, shaved off his eyebrows. He released 17. He released some very thoughtful, sad, contemplative pieces. And then he released Question Mark with blue hair, where he was calmer in his life. He had really tried really hard to make up for a lot of the bad things that he did. He knew they were bad, and he knew he, shouldn't have done them exactly. He talked about creation and evolution, about growing as a person, about doing good. He spent, he made a lot of money. He was, musicians of his caliber, they do make a lot of money, but he was exceptionally good at making money. He was really good at negotiating and getting a lot of money, and he was pretty smart in terms of what he was able to achieve with labels and stuff and not getting screwed over. He made tons of money. And with that, he bought one house. It was a big house, but he bought one house. He bought himself one car, and everything else he gave to his grandmothers, his mother, and his people in his community that needed it. He gave it to children. He went to orphanages. He spoke to them, and he spoke to every single one of them. He didn't just, he gave the stereotypical, I'm going to stand in front of this room and I'm going to talk to all of you with whatever, what have you. But after that, he went to every single kid and he would ask them, what do you want to do? What are your dreams? And he would listen. He would comment to every single one of them, one by one. And he did do his best to be better. And, I don't know, perhaps if you don't know the circumstances of his death, he didn't go around with security. He didn't like that. It was actually often quoted that he would oftentimes go around his neighborhood and he would He would join the pickup football games, and he would just, interact with the community. And he said he didn't want security because it would seem too threatening. He just wanted to be part of it. And one day he went out with his uncle, actually, and he was going to buy a bike, a motorcycle. And he went into the motorcycle shop. He found a motorcycle he liked. It was $50K. He went to the bank. He wanted to withdraw $50K in cash so that he could just buy it in cash. Man, I really wish he used his credit card instead, or some debit card or something. I don't know why he needed the cash, but he withdrew the cash. There's bank footage from that day of him talking to the teller. He was smiling. He was happy. He wasn't, everything was fine. And then he went to go buy that motorcycle, and a SUV blocked him in when he was about to, I think it was pull out of the parking lot or what have you, in near the motorcycle thing. They blocked him, and then they went in. They attempted to rob him, and they shot him. It ended up that the shot was actually in his neck. So, when I heard the news first, he got shot. So I hoped he was, like I said, I hoped it was a non-fatal area or a less fatal area. If you get shot, you will die. But, in the arm, in the leg, even the torso. But then the news came out a little bit after that. It was in the neck. Now, that's not a very good place to get shot, let me tell you. Especially the jugular area. Obviously, any area that's involving your breathing is not going to be good. You're not going to get oxygen. At the very best, you'll probably be brain dead, depending on how fast you can get to the hospital. In the end, he passed away. Of course, you know how the story ends. And I found him at 15 when his hair was gray, like I said. And, his hair turned blue in me following him. And by the time he died, he talked so much about positivity. He talked about how rappers should stop talking about how drugs are cool, how shooting people is cool, and how being terrible is cool. And at the time, there was a lot of beef within the rap community. There was people yelling. There were people sometimes getting physically violent with each other by shootings and whatnot. And usually it was just music being made at each other that was angry. And he said, what if instead of trying to prove who has the bigger pee-pee, you guys went out and saw who could do the most for your community? Why don't you fight over that? Who can do more good? But overall, he was saying so much about, be good, be kind, be positive. So when he died, and I was 16, and I'd spent a year at my 15-year-old age wondering, why am I the way I am? I just had a thought. And part of this was also contributed to when I was 16, a couple days before X died, I communicated with someone who was very kind to me, who, when you're a very mean person for so many years, very few people are going to be very kind to you. I met someone who was kind to me. They did show me kindness at, a few days before X died and after X died. And, with both of these, and because when he died, I really thought, there was a question of, here's this man trying to make better for himself, trying to do his best to make the world a little bit better, to make up for the bad things that he's done. Way worse than me. I never stabbed anyone. Physically. Maybe emotionally. But, and the world took this guy away in the stupidest way possible. Because someone wanted a couple $1,000s in a bag. And that's a really good reason to say, the world effing sucks. I'm going to go back to being a piece of garbage, and I'm going to be really goddamn happy about it. But because I'm, had that person who had shown me kindness, I thought, okay, maybe there is light in the world. And, this guy who I I wouldn't even say I looked up to, but I related to. These are the words that he left with. To be good, to do your best, be positive. Positivity on top of the world it was. And I thought, you know what, what's the harm in trying? So I tried to be positive. I tried to help people. I tried to be more optimistic. And I found that, being positive, being more optimistic, putting more of that type of energy out in the world, things were better personally. It felt like my luck was better too. It felt like the universe, if you put out some positivity, it gave you some positivity back. And I mean luck in like the most superficial sense of the word. I mean like the video games I played, my RNG would be better. That's the type of luck I mean. This dumbest, stupidest thing. I know it's dumb, but for some reason, that's what happened. Coincidence? Probably. But who effing cares? And so when he died, all of that said, you just heard much of my life story there. I didn't cry. At the time, I wasn't really emotional in that way. These days, I cry like a baby. I'm crying every time I'm reading one of these goddamn stories for you. I didn't cry in this one yet, but I cried in the last Will story I read. Did I? No, not the taxi one. I haven't read the other one yet. I cried in whatever. There was a story I read a couple days ago. I cried in that one. You can hear it in my voice. You can hear it at the end. I watch anime that's sad now, and I bawl. I don't bawl, but I have tears that fall down my face. But at the time, I didn't have that as much. But I was sad, man. And there's a lot of other people who were sad, and I spent so much time talking to them, trying to make them feel better, because, hey, what a better way to start my journey and being a better person. And that was nice. To this day, I think I can say that I miss the guy. I really wish that he didn't die. I don't think he should have died like that. Again, I never met him either, just like this story. And so that's just one of the things that really resonated with me. I've probably been talking for like 20 minutes, and this isn't even going to be the entire outro, because I'm going to record another outro when I finish reading the story. Tomorrow, hopefully. God help me editing this. I don't know if this is going to be uploaded on a Tuesday or a Thursday. Probably a Thursday. You had a 5-hour story that was a compilation of the Dark Sun anthology. This is why, because this is going to take me this is going to take me the full week to edit. I don't have time to get 2 stories out this week. So that's why you had the Dark Sun anthology a couple days ago. This one's 3 bloody hours. This is a big story. And I'm releasing it all at once. Goodness gracious me. But anyhow, I completely understand how they felt in the story at the beginning there. Torn over someone they had never met, who for them was a role model. I'm not sure what Kurt Cobain was preaching. I don't know if he was much of a role model character. I think he really did just kind of do drugs and made loud music, to my understanding. I actually don't know what... I don't know if he'd be the best role model, but again, I wasn't alive during that time. Maybe he was great. And he influenced a lot of the musicians that I listened to, Unfortunately, blow my brains like Kurt Cobain is a common line in a lot of the rap music. Yeah, anyhow, there's a ton of lines in here that are really good. I'm reluctant to continue talking because I spent so much time giving you the life story that you did not ask for. And, but I liked we stayed there in a state of almost, that's not exactly how it was written. But that line in the middle of the story, that was really good. There's so many other lines in the story that are just so really good. And I want to give my overall thoughts on just Simon's writing and the story and everything at the end. So I'll just save that until I get to the outro. So Simon, I'm so sorry you had to listen through all of that absolute and utter garbage nonsense about me being a horrible person. Before you got to hear me actually talk about your story. But also, in fairness, I wrote him an email back after I'd read the entire story with my thoughts on it. And it was a very kind email, to say the least. Maybe I'll read it. I don't know. Probably not. I'll just say some words when I get there. Anyhow, I'm gonna go to bed. I will. I really have been talking for 30 bloody minutes. I'm so sorry. I'll try to cut out the uhs and ums and turn it to like 20 minutes, okay? Anyhow, thank you all. Why am I saying thank you? You still have to listen to the rest of the outro, which is probably gonna be another 10 goddamn minutes. Alright, well, let's do that. Good night. And that is Scar Eater by Simon B. Elsvor. Simon has written a few stories on the channel now, Bright Yellow Terror, and some others. I'm actually going to check to see if perhaps I actually did make. He has written The Terrible Noise Between Us, The Temple of Screaming Flesh. Can't believe I forgot that one. That one was really, really good. He wrote Anything for True Art, It Screams When It Doesn't Whisper, and again, Bright Yellow Terror. So there's quite a number that he's written on the channel. Some that even I've forgotten. Sorry, Seb. I should definitely make a playlist for that. And this is joining those. All of his stories tend to be in the 40 to an hour mark, but this one is looking to be 3 hours, and it might be 3.5 because, like you heard a second ago, I just I'm doing 2 outros because I'm recording this in 2 pieces. And in this part, in the last part, I kind of talked about myself and whatnot, but in this part, I want to talk a lot more about the story. The story was fantastic for a number of reasons. A, Simon is a great, amazing, incredible author. B, he is an author continuously improving. Honestly, this is my favorite story from him. Temple of Screaming Flesh was really bloody good. I really liked Temple of Screaming Flesh. But this one was just the literature of it. It beats the Temple of Screaming Flesh, even though both of them had absurdly incredible plots and narratives. And the narrative in this story, combined with Simon's ability to portray a world, is truly, truly incredible. In this story, we had 4 friends, all written with unique personalities, all written with different kinds of backstories, all of them written correctly. We never really understood why Mr. Andrews was kind of a weirdo, I suppose, other than the fact that he was an English teacher, and perhaps that is a good enough reason. However, this story, there's so many things that you can try to take away from it. You can try to think about it as a abuse story, as a story that portrays the cycle of abuse, as was written near the end of the story here. Someone gets abused, they become an abuser for a multitude of reasons, and that cycle just goes on and on and on and on. And that cycle persists in so many different types, so many sectors of life. Of course, it persists in personal life, as what happened to Archibald Rowan, and as what happened to Wentworth. It persisted in, if you're in the medical system, nurses are pretty mean to each other. Doctors are pretty mean to residents sometimes because their senior surgeons were mean to them, or attendings were mean to them, and people like to persist that trauma for different reasons. Rowan he started by wanting to understand what had happened to him. For other people, they just want to think that if it happened to me, it must happen to other people, so that they feel like they're not the only one that had to go through it. It's just an avoidance of loneliness. And others probably just become bad people, or they saw the example of abuse, and that's just what they became, whatever the reason. So the story could be about that. The story could be about taking opportunities, about taking that person's hand when it was offered to you. The story could be about, how would you say, adults taking advantage of children, like John Gacy. Maybe the story is just a retelling of his story with different characters. It's not. He did have people in his kids in his boys in his basement, but yeah, maybe that's what it was about. Yeah, so maybe it was about adults taking advantage of children. There's so many things to take away from the story, so many different things that can resonate with you in the story, and even things less negative. You can take away things like sometimes things are outside of your control and they're not your fault, and you shouldn't stay guilty about it forever. Like the Scar Eater being quote unquote summoned. It wasn't summoned, it was always there. Or not being able to quote unquote save Dylan. Maybe if he had just done one thing different, said one thing different, done one thing different, Dylan would have made it. And the ending of the story was one of the things that when Simon sent me this story to read alone. So I've actually read this entire story before reading it to you here about 2 months ago, maybe. And, I read the entire thing because he asked for feedback. And I read it start to finish, which took a while. I have a really slow reading speed. But I read it all. And I wrote him this pretty long email saying I really didn't have that much to feedback on. I just sat there kind of just, telling him how great of an author he was. And I felt like a bit of a suck up, but it was all genuine. This was incredible. And part of what truly made it incredible was Simon respects you as a reader / listener. He does not say things that does not need to be said. In this story, which is as a PDF 72 pages long, 3 hours long, in this story, other than a couple things that did get repeated, he wrote the thing about the train tracks and the weeds coming up from the earth like 3 times on accident. I should have caught that while I was reading and giving him feedback. Honestly, that's my fault. He asked for feedback. I did a bad job as an editor. And then he wrote the thing about Dylan's mom and dad like 2 times, probably on accident. They were really far away from each other, so he had it in his head, and then he probably didn't recall if he wrote it or not, and what have you. But aside from some of those oopsie doopsies, which 72 pages, what are you gonna do? It's a lot of goddamn words. Okay, mistakes happen. But within all of that, there's very little wasted narrative in the story. He doesn't sit there and explain what his Dylan's dad did to his mother. He explains the outcome. He knows that what happened. You can fill it out for yourself. He doesn't explain how Dylan got the scar. He gave you enough pieces. You know what happened. He doesn't explain what happened to Wentworth's friend in high school. He gave you the pieces. You know what happened. You have a brain. He knows that you have a brain. He doesn't sit there and write everything out for you and lay it all down for you because he can, because he thinks that people are dumb. It's not like an anime where, like a junk food anime where you're sitting there watching and they're like explaining everything that's happening in front of you while you're watching it. It doesn't do that. Simon he writes things, he writes the story, and he respects you enough to know where he doesn't need to waste the words. And I think that's really good. I love when authors do that. It's helpful for word count, but it's also helpful for engagement. It helps you keep engaged and makes you think about the story. And B, it's just respectful. Nice to be respected. And yeah, so that was really good. But another thing is, one thing the story reminds me of is an anime. And that anime is actually, it's a weird thing. It's not 12 episodes. It's technically speaking 3 episodes, but each episode is like 30 minutes long. All 3 episodes usually just get put into one movie for an hour and 30 minutes. It's called 5 centimeters per second. And it's not about any of this at all. It's actually, it's a romance-ish anime, maybe drama. And I'm just going to spoil it for you. That story is about a couple, 3 stages of their life. Episode 1, they meet, they become a couple, things are good. Episode 2, they grow up a little bit, things get harder, and they split. And episode 3 is their lives after. And one of the things that I learned, I watched this anime 2 times, and one of the things that I got from that show, especially the second time I watched it, was the realization, a sad, sad realization, that there isn't always happy endings. That life isn't always going to be the romance anime of, oh, we met in high school, cute romance love, we got married. 5 centimeters per second portrayed a much more realistic view of life. And this story, it didn't wrap everything up in some nice, supernaturally aided bow. Dylan died. He's not coming back. And Stump and Gordy and Jake, they were all affected for a long time. It seems like Gordy and Stump were able to move on. They weren't as physically or directly impacted, so, you know, they probably could. A little bit of therapy, a little bit of pour yourself in your work, and they probably would be fine. And Jake, you know, there's always a chance for people to be fine. You know, it's not nice to think that there's a thing that a human being can go through that they can't get over. I don't want to believe that. I just don't want to, and thus I'm not going to believe it. However, them not talking to each other anymore, that's realistic. That is life. Sometimes you can bond over trauma, and for the rest of your lives, that is a reason that you stick to someone. But a lot of times it also is just something you don't want to remember anymore, especially for Gordy and Stump, who probably did want to move on, who did not want to. They needed to, and not probably, they did want to move on. That's why they left. And they wanted to live their lives and forget about all of this, probably. And that's real. That's life. This story didn't end with Dylan somehow supernaturally being brought back, and or maybe he wasn't dead. They went into the basement and they shot the monster, the Scar Eater, and Dylan was in the corner barely hanging on, and a surgery saved his life. And everyone lived happily ever after. Meditashi, that's Japanese for the same thing. And that didn't happen. And that's, yeah, it is depressing. But it's also realistic. It was incredibly well written. It was maturely written. It wasn't written to be depressing. It wasn't written to be anything. It was written as what happened. It was written as a retelling of the story of these 4 kids that went through this thing. That, yes, this wouldn't happen in real life. But that's part of what makes this story so good. It is as real as an author could have written it, in terms of the reactions of all the characters and the continuation. And the final piece of that is that our main character, unfortunately, he never did get over it. And that's a possibility. Gordy did. Stump did. And yeah, sure, like I said, they were less directly affected, but our main character stayed there. And I think that it wasn't just because of the Scar Eater. I think it was a lot due to Dylan. You know, you heard those last few paragraphs where that's what he does. closes his eyes and remembers that one moment over and over and over again, and I think both of those things tether him to that place. He doesn't want to let go of that. He doesn't want to move on from that. That's scary and perhaps guilty. You don't want to, if you feel guilty that you were the reason that Dylan didn't make it, then forgetting that memory, doing something with your life is not fair. You don't deserve it. Maybe. That's what he might think. And that's possible. That is an ending that is honestly pretty likely. So, yeah. Usually make stupider jokes. I'm usually more upbeat during all of this, but this story genuinely is pretty impactful, and I'm thinking about how I'm going to have to edit a 4-hour goddamn effing raw audio track, and I'm having a panic attack over it. But, yeah. A will story will be next week, and yeah, please let me know what you thought about this story in the comments below. Please let Simon know how thankful you are for sending me a 3-hour story that had no good stopping point that I could cut in half so I could put this into 2 parts instead of editing a 3-hour goddamn story in 1 week. And yeah, just my blabbering has probably been 30 to 40 minutes of total time in this entire story or video. So sorry about that. You got 2 outros technically, kind of, sort of. I put them together, but whatever. I will see you in the next one, because just as with all of the 3 characters we had in the end of this story, life goes on. And unfortunately, I gotta record more stories in the future. Also, Wentworth's voice is not the Scar Eater voice changed. Wentworth had a deep voice. Scar Eater had a weird maxi airy voice. Yeah, sorry. Part of me, since I read the story, I knew Wentworth was the big bad at the end of the day. But if I made their voices too similar, they're both gonna have the same like effect on it, you know. But if I made their voices too similar, it would have just been a bit of a giveaway. So yeah, I know it's inconsistent technically to what you heard in the tunnel and what you heard in the garage versus what you heard at the end, especially when he repeated the line that he said in the garage near the end. But yeah, it's on purpose. It wasn't a mistake. Sorry, just for the sake of giving you some manner of surprise. Because at the end of the day, it really could have been Mr. Andrews the entire time. Truly, it could have. He was a good red herring. He was a brilliant red herring. It could have been him the entire way through. So, yeah. Anyhow, let me know what you thought about it below. Leave a like, hit the subscribe button below. Become a channel member if you want to support me and get videos early and ad-free, or a podcast member if you want the same things. I will see you in the next one. Ego Volt Anima Vestra.